All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. My name is Thinker St. James, and today we are going to be going over UFC Fight Night, Jan versus Figueiredo. And to do just that with me, my good friend, the Ohio player, a man who had no trouble getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to watch these fights, Mr. Chase Parton. How you doing, brother?
We are here. Oh my gosh. I feel like I have so much to praise about this card. Like start to finish, it was an experience to start. Like that was great. Getting up at 2 in the morning after getting off work at 10. It was just the chef's kiss to the week. Like it was actually really, really fun. Something new, something wacky. And I think we're going to talk about this in an event, like not just like particular fights. They are great and we'll go into them, but like the event in a whole, like this was one of the best of the year. I want to talk about it. Like if this was,
Absolutely.
if Noche was like third, fourth, fifth range, this is kind of fifth, sixth, seventh range. You know, maybe that's harsh. Hold on. Let me
I was going to
think.
say, I mean,
That sounds harsh, but I'm thinking like 300. Okay. And then, we'll get into it, but this was really, really fun.
Absolutely. No, I agree completely. This was one of the better, definitely up there in the best conversation, barring a couple. But yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a whole bunch today. We got a lot on the slate. But to start it off, we will be talking about UFC Fight Night, Jan versus Figueiredo. We're going over every single fight on this card. If you are in the chat and have something that you want to talk about that is not pertaining to the fights that we are talking about at the moment, you can throw it in there or save it for after the card wraps up. We will get back to it. But to begin, UFC Fight Night, Jan versus Figueiredo took place in Macau, China at the Galaxy Arena. And as you said, you want to talk about it as a whole, as an event itself. So what did you think of this event?
It was really, really good. Just maybe portion of it being that like I was maybe slap happy from the time, just getting up and I was delirious and maybe I was in dreamland for most of this. I was experiencing something otherworldly, but it
You were
was
in
just
like
really,
a haze.
I must have been, I've been there before. So I think this was just, it was so fun. That's all I got to say. I had a really good time. Let me point this out first.
Yeah,
I had
sure.
a really good time, including the fact that for some reason my mic wasn't working for the first 3 hours, brother. And
Oh,
I never even
wow.
noticed. I never even noticed. Nobody in the chat said anything. They just kept leaving and joining. And I'm thinking, like, damn, Thinker's over there with a bunch of fucking viewers having a good old time. And I can't get shit. And nobody want to say nothing. Henry joins and he goes, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, mate. Your mic wasn't working." I'm like, "You motherfucker." So got it working. And it was still a great time. I couldn't even be mad for what I was witnessing. Like the reactions, I might have to go do voiceover and test my acting career. Like this was top notch. I'm telling you.
Yeah, no. All right. Well, fair enough then. I mean, I'm glad that you got it working, and thank you very much for stopping by the watch along on my channel. I appreciated that. Yeah, this 3 a.m. start time was pretty heavy, but it was definitely fun. I enjoyed it as well, actually. I was able, so it kind of worked out crazy for me because you were saying that you got off at 10 and were rolling right into it thereafter at 3. I had been working all day up till that point, basically like had the normal day gig and then was hustling like crazy to get the most recent episode of Yama out, which is out now. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But got that out, was able to sneak a nap in for like 2 hours, like, just under 2 hours. I was a little bit worried that I was going to be able to wake up, but was able to wake up without problem. Got the Red Bull in me, and it was a whole lot of fun. Shout out to Sarah Toby from Fight Show, who stopped by the chat as well. It was great hanging with her. A couple of the regulars in there as well. Much appreciated to all y'all. And this was a really, really great one, because what I was saying about it too is that, like, to do all of that and to have the fights be terrible would really kind of have sucked, and it would have been a lot harder. But these fights were a lot of fun, so it made it a whole hell of a lot easier.
You bring up a great point, because I initially said right before it started, I said the UFC cannot have the pacing be what it has been the last few weeks. We can't have 6 promos because a fight gets canceled or we get early finishes. Like, that just can't happen, because I'm gonna fall asleep. And I feel like they knew that. They were in their bag right here. Other than, and I'll point it out early because it was quite funny while the chat is here. Why did we get a Stipe retirement video at 4 in the morning in China?
That did feel a little bit off. Like, I mean, it was good that they finally did something at all, because why did it not happen at 3:09 is the bigger question. But, like, yeah, it was random as fuck to just have the Stipe video just tossed in, like, with apropos of nothing really, aside from the fact that he did retire at the event previous. So very strange, but I'm glad that they did something, period. But yeah, a little bit weird to have that kind of snuck in there. But no, I was definitely going to mention the pacing, because, as you had said, this is something that you key into. It's not something that really had been on my radar as much, because generally I'm doing the watch alongs with Vitz King. We're chatting, we're having a good time with the chat and all that kind of stuff. So it's not really something that, like, I'm super hyper aware of at all times on these cards. But I noticed on this one, I was like, man, they are really rolling through these fights at a good clip. Like, if one fight ends, even if it was a knockout, like, we had a couple of really good knockouts on this card, the next fight was queued up in a way that made sense and kept the flow going really nicely. So definitely hats off for that one.
Yeah, 100%. I think there was also a good balance of finishes and, decisions, especially early on. Like, I'm looking at it, like, we kind of, I was remembering at the time, like, holy shit, we're getting a lot of finishes compared to decisions. But looking back, like, there were a lot of good decisions, at least to say the least. They
Yeah,
were
no,
worthy of it.
I agree completely. Like, there was not a single fight on this card, honestly. Like, I mean, yeah, really, I'm going back and thinking about it. Like, if there was one that stuck out that I was like, man, that was a little bit, like, mid. I mean, there were some that yeah, if you want to put them in the grand scheme of things, as far as, like, all fights go or anything like that, then yeah, maybe, that we're not talking about every single fight being the BMF fight. But for a card like this, there was not a single fight on here that I was like, that was a shit fight. You know what I mean? Like, these were a really solid set of fights, even the ones that went to decision. So yeah, very, very good stuff overall on this card. And I also did want to make mention of 2 things. One that I know that you keyed in on, but first, this was the debut of Mackenzie Pavicic as the roving reporter, who I thought was very nice. Obviously someone that they're having cut her teeth on an event out in China in the middle of the night, to prove her sea legs, so to speak, which is something that the organization does often with the commentary team and people who are orbiting as far as commentary goes, roving reporters and things like that. So I thought Mackenzie did pretty well. And then the other thing that I know you keyed in on was that cutie pie ring girl.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm so happy. I was tweeting right after, the day after. I was trying to see if Dana's going to bring her back. Can we get her not in China? Can she come over? Can we get her at the Apex? I don't care where she goes. I just want to see her at the next one.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. She was very nice and very pleasant to look at. So yeah, so really good overall. Let's jump on into the actual fights themselves, starting off with Mahashate versus Nicholas Mata. What'd you think?
this one, it was a banger. It was like, to start off, well, first, to start off with the opposing person winning. I think it set the tone. Like, now we gotta, like, come at them. We gotta win. I know a lot of them were like China versus, China was a couple of them, but they had to come and, defend the home court after they got smoked in the first one, and I thought that was really good for them. Even though Mahashate is a kind of a dog. Like, I know he was getting whooped, but I mean, it was a good whooping. It was a good whooping. It looked good. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it was a whooping that started a little bit later on, because that first round I thought was pretty close, even with the drops. I mean, because there was drops on both sides.
and they
Um,
didn't count one on
I
Mahashate's side.
yeah, and I'm like, that's always we talk every podcast, it feels like we're talking about how these numbers are calculated, what they consider a significant strike, what they consider a drop, all that kind of stuff. So it's like sometimes these numbers are not going to reflect the reality of the fight, which is often the case, I would say, this being one of them. But either way, I mean, what we saw was certainly the reality on the ground there. And I mean, it was like one was definitely a worse dropping than the other, but either way, I mean, they were certainly competitive through that first round. But then, of course, Machate got dropped in the second and the third as well. He is a tough guy, though, man. I mean, obviously, to have this thing go to decision in general with the way that he was getting dropped, it's like this was a good, tough fight between these two guys.
And I feel like there was also a tight submission in like the third round on Mata's side. Like I'm pretty sure I remember like thinking like, dude, if he gets out of this choke after being dropped like 4 times, like that's pretty crazy. And he did, but I don't see them counting it. So maybe I'm misremembering, but I think it was this one.
Yeah, it might have been. And I'm in the same boat as you because there are a couple that like sort of bleed together with just because of the dynamics of this card and the regional element of it. You had a lot of fighters from the same region, so there's a little bit of a blend for a couple of these. But yeah, either way, I mean, I'm fairly certain you're correct about that. And with the 30-27s across the board for Mata, I mean, that is correct, but it also, as I was kind of alluding to here, it doesn't really tell the full tale because Mahashate was really holding his own as much as he could with the opposition that he had coming back at him. And going back to the previous week, I was thinking that Mahashate was going to kind of walk through this fight. So shout out to Nicholas Mata for really pulling it together and showing some good fundamentals in this one.
Yeah, it was to a point where Mahashate like was kind of scared to throw back. Like he was being told like you gotta fire back at this point because you're getting just walked down, getting up against the cage, and Mata was just like Mata looked good, man. That's all I gotta say. In enemy territory, doing a 30-27. It's pretty impressive. I know he didn't get the finish, but Lord, he was trying. He was trying to
Yeah,
kill that kid.
for sure. And also, it's interesting that you bring up the enemy territory aspect of it because there are going to be a couple on here that are that same type of situation. And it's always really solid when you see a fighter come in and is able to overcome the crowd, overcome the, fighting on enemy soil kind of aspect of it. And there were a couple of really nice ones of that on this card. So, really good job to start it off with Nicholas Mata getting the job done way far from home.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of notably if anything happened in the post fight because there are some that I do want to talk about. There were some post fight speeches and some things going on, so I don't remember anything about this one
This one I don't
particularly.
think got a post fight, so
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think they just moved on from this one. But either
Well,
way,
that makes sense.
sure.
Brazilian. You're like, what's he gonna come out here and say to him? Like,
Well, and also not a finish, considering that the finishes all made it so that they could have a nice amount of time to talk their shit. So you want to have some time on the mic, get yourself a finish. That's a good way to start.
I kind of like that idea. If that's actually true, I didn't catch on to it. But if that's been a thing that they're starting to implement, get a finish, you get the mic time. Like, I kind of dig that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule, but it's certainly it definitely lends itself when the finish happens. I think they go by an arbitrary decision as to like how they think the fight went. Is kind of my interpretation of it because it is like some decisions get it and some decisions don't. But yeah, I mean that would like it's definitely a much easier choice for them to say if you get the finish, you're obviously going to get the time, and also there's more time in the broadcast allotted to the fight, so there's more time for you to be on the mic as well.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So good fight to start this thing off. I thought I was very happy with this as the starting point. Definitely got the blood flowing early. This would be the 3:10 a.m. mark around the time that this fight was taking place or so. Probably not even that much. Maybe it was like 3:05 because like as we had said, they really kept the pace of this thing moving really nicely. But either way, middle of the morning, middle of the night, however you want to look at it, first fight gets things going pretty well. But this next fight is one that I think really started to set the tone for everything here. This is Zhao Long versus Quang Bang over here. What did you think of this one?
I want to first say this is a fight that I made sure I showed my dad the day after. He really
Good
enjoyed it.
choice. Yeah.
He really enjoyed it. And I also want to note, and this is, listen, I'm not trying to say anything harsh because it is a cool statement if you really think about it. This is the first fight, and maybe the only one, honestly, where I thought these are Mortal Kombat names. This is going to be a fun, this is fun. Like Zhao Long and Quang Li, like, come on now. They were about to throw some, and they did. They threw some fireballs, really. It was good.
Test your might over here for sure.
Dude. Whew.
And yeah, actually, while we're talking about this one, because I believe that Zhao Long is a former Road to the UFC winner, I did want to bring up this comment by Anakin here saying, hope they bring it back or sorry, this one rather, the Road to the UFC fights were fun. I mean, there have been some ones that we've seen in the past that have been, a little bit less than stellar, I would say. But these fights for the Road to the UFC were pretty on point. And this is a former winner who had, I think, competed twice on the competition, if I'm not mistaken. So good to see him actually get his win here in the big show. And I mean, Zhao Long, this dude, super confident, pointing to the ground in round one. I'm like, this guy really has balls of stone over here. I mean, Lee had his moments, couple nice hands landed, but you could see the difference in the bravado from like the jump. I mean, Long was really, really like feeling himself to the point where I'd say he probably should be a little careful about that, because like things like the flying knee that he was trying to throw was like nowhere near in range of landing. But overall, I mean, I appreciate the self-assuredness when you put on a performance like he did.
Yes, this one, it was really, really fun. Zhao Long, I think, yes, very, very reckless, but hilarious. The finger pointing consecutively, like we were going nuts when that was happening. Like, holy shit, he is a dog. He's going for it in round one, end of round one. Then when round two comes, oh my God, he's doing it again. He wants to scrub. Then I don't know if you caught it. It was probably like the seventh or eighth time. He hit him with the slow motion, like you here. Like it was really, really funny. I'm like, it was top tier. I swear to you, this guy's amazing. And then, other than the performance, like he really just walked him down the entire time. Quan Lee, Quan Lee did fire back. In the first round, it was a little competitive. Second round, it started to slip away. Third round, he basically gassed out. Like when he went down, he wasn't unconscious. Like he's just laying there, like I'm really fucking tired. So I
Yeah.
think it was just Zhao Long just got the best of him. Really, that's
For sure. Yeah, I think that that's absolutely correct. Yeah, and to your point about the point, the like the emphatic point, I believe on the watch log, I said he was saying to him, "Stand here so I can hit you."
yeah,
And
yeah.
it was like, really, that's what he wanted to do. This guy was coming in here like, I want to wreck shop, and I appreciate that. It's like we talk about this sometimes with some of these fighters where it's like there's somewhat of a lackadaisical element to certain fighters that does work for them sometimes. I mean, some of these guys with a little more of that like fluid kind of drunken mastery sort of style, like sometimes that can be effective. There's guys like Alex Caceres comes to mind with who sometimes have a little bit like laid back
Muslim
is
Salikov comes to mind.
well, I mean, we'll talk about him, in a little bit here, the king of kung fu getting the job done. But yeah, there are some people that work for, but as far as like from the fan perspective, it's always cool to see a guy who's like, I am going to come in here and take your fucking head off, and that's really what he ended up doing. And just like you said, essentially outworking him to the point of getting that, because it's not like Lee was not trying. I mean, like he landed a couple of decent shots. He was moving nicely. Both of them were moving nicely. That's another thing about this fight, is that the pace was grueling. I mean, these dudes were really both, in very active motion for the majority of the fight, and just over the course of it, Long just really wanted it more and was able to secure that third round knockout. So very
It,
nice stuff.
it was really just experience at that point. I mean, having not the experience in the ring necessarily, but having many, many fights under your belt, knowing, what your body can handle and how far you're able to go with what energy you can use. I mean, that's
Yeah, this is a good point that you bring up, though, and I do want to touch on that just briefly. Is that there are a couple of these fighters on this card that have gone through the Road to UFC system with crazy records. So obviously, in China, I would suspect a lot of them are fighting, or just regionally in general. I don't know exactly what organizations are putting on this many fights for these people, but like, excuse me, to come in 27 or to come in 26-9 just starting out in the UFC is kind of wild. And there's a couple of people on the card like that. So just an interesting note that some of these people who are just now starting off in the UFC have a lot of experience under their belt that we'll see on this card.
And to answer Anakin, I
Yes, yeah.
don't see too much of future because I think I said it last week. Like, look at the records for them. They're just starting out. Like, they've obviously had their MMA career already. This is the back end of it, kind of deal. Kwang Lee, though, I think
Well, that's
there's
who he's
more of
talking
a
about in this one. Oh,
no,
no, no, no.
no,
Sorry. Yeah,
yeah.
you're right.
And then Kwang Lee, though, on the other end, he's very green, very new to it. He just got overwhelmed, kind of deal. I think there may be more potential for him because he's not at his ceiling for what we know. Zhao Long, that's what he's going to be forever. He's just going to be bull in the china shop type deal. It just takes one sniper to just knock him right off his course, kind of deal. Walk in with his chin up, like he was already busted in the mouth real early. Kwang Lee was just not able to produce the output that would be able to do it. Like I said, got overwhelmed. And Zhao Long, shout out to him. He was able to finish it. Like, that's what you would love to see.
And yeah, and to the point though, I think I would have to slightly disagree because what I think also one of the ideas that I'm kind of getting at with these records is that like it reminds me a little bit of like the Muay Thai records that you see where these guys have massive records, like a lot of fights under their belt, like just by nature of fighting a whole hell of a lot. So I don't think that it's necessarily that he's on the tail end just by having that many fights. It just means that he's had a lot of fights coming into the organization. Now, I mean, that it does remain to be seen as to where the ceiling might end up being with all of that being said. But I don't think that like it necessarily has to cap off. I mean, a guy like that who's coming in with that level of intensity, if he keeps that and is able to replicate that with fighters that are higher up in the echelons, then I mean, I think that there's probably a decent future for him potentially. On the other side of the equation with Kwang Lee now, I mean that like 0-2 does not look good ever, but he like what they were saying on commentary was that his other fight, I believe, was against Chris Gutierrez. So that's a decent name to be coming in on short notice against. I think that's what they said. And then a fight like this, as a banger as this was, like I don't think that this one necessarily like drops his stock tremendously, but he is at the point now where he needs to get a win. Like
Yeah.
it's just,
He's got to be at his best form next fight, if there is even a next fight. Maybe it was a
right.
2-fight deal kind of deal. But
Yeah. Which is
yeah.
unfortunate too, because he is representing Vietnam, which is an underrepresented country in the organization. So
Yeah, surprisingly, my dad he thought Kwang Lee was going to get the best of him at the beginning. He was like, I'm going to go with the Vietnam guy, man. They're some animals.
for sure. Absolutely. So hopefully he can turn it around. But for now, Zhao Long getting a very, very emphatic win and calling out for a lot in his post fight. He was very fired up.
I think that was really, really funny. There was a part where he was doing his thing, and I couldn't tell you what he was saying, but I was with it. I think I heard 50G somehow. I heard that.
He wanted
And
his bonus.
he wanted the bonus, and then when the translator was talking, he even gave an extra like right in, like he yelled like right back into it, and it was really, really funny. Like the translator was like, oh, "Hold on, like I got you, brother. I'll get it across."
Well,
I
and
know.
I think that we should at least just briefly touch on the translations in general, just because it was pretty funny to see. It's in China; they're generally a somewhat reserved people, so it was kind of funny to see these dudes going absolutely apeshit in their post fights, and these translators having to, kind of get their own emphasis on it to get the point across and whatnot. And then the other thing that was funny with the translators, that shout out to Andy, who always the one of the funniest people ever. But Nav in the Discord was saying that it was it was funny as hell when they had translators of different languages also having to go. So it was like they're playing telephone in real time.
Dude, yeah, since now we're doing the translator talk, I'll bring up the specific, I think it was the Korean one, man.
Yes. Yeah.
They brought out the Yakuza boss's like henchman, bro. I swear to you, he showed up first off. He was huge. Like actually, I want to make a point. The dudes that were in Zhang Ming Yang's corner were huge too. They were as big as him. So anyway,
Yeah.
so the Yakuza translator was hilarious because I'm pretty sure again he had to like bounce it between, like it was like a moment. and he was huge, dressed in all black, probably was tatted all underneath, and he had perfect English. It was ridiculous. So anyway, shout out him. He's a beast.
But yeah, all the translation was great. So don't get it twisted. I'm not
Yeah,
talking shit about the translators
true.
themselves, but it's just overall it was an interesting presentational element there. And then Bisbing having to navigate all of it was funny as well. So
Yeah, and
um,
he did great not giving extra words on the mic. Everybody
he
wanted one. Everybody wanted just one.
Bisbing is the fucking best with that. He has his move down to a science, bro. He's got the mic in this hand, and then when it's time to go, he just full body pivots, just whoom, one
Yeah,
swift motion away. So it's like, no. So yeah, I know it all worked out really well with that, but definitely funny, something funny to note.
yeah,
But great fight and a great win for Zhao Long.
yeah. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. And we're tearing through a little bit, but these fights were at this pace as well. So this is like really, it's like these are the types of fights, at least these earlier ones, where it's like they're just good, solid fights. So there's not a whole lot of like crazy goofiness to kind of dig into the weeds on, which is good. I appreciate that as well when you just have some like good, solid fights every once in a while. Not a lot of crazy reffing stuff that like was sticking out. The judging overall I thought was pretty solid as well. So I mean, like, really high marks across the board for this card. But just a general note as we move on to Lonnie Kavanaugh versus Jose Ochoa. This was a close fight. What'd you think?
I think initially them change, or well, him most definitely changing it from going from Lanier to going with Talani, I think was a better option. Just being more marketable. Lani is a little easier to go with, and then I also wanted to say that coming in at a fight that doesn't have anybody from the region, this is interesting. Like you have, I think it's a lot to show out for because you're the only one from your region on this card. Like you have a lot to show for. You got a whole region that can watch you and know who you are, or be like, oh, maybe England or Peru, like they're like pretty good too, kind of deal. Maybe we should look out for some of them guys.
But the caveat to that is that Kavanaugh is actually half Chinese, though.
He does is okay. Okay, that
Yeah,
makes kind of
yeah.
sense. That's a
They made
cool, that's a
a
cool tidbit.
yeah they made a point about that on the Contender Series. Of course, Kavanaugh known around these parts at least for having one of the most devastating knockouts of all time on the Contender Series. So during that whole situation when his opponent was being attended to, they were talking a little bit about that. I believe that it is his mother who is from China. So he
Hmm.
yeah, so just so a slight regional connection in that regard, but I mean, the point still stands. I mean, he's kind of almost has more on his shoulders for that, right? I mean, he's got his China connection for the
Oh,
home region
no
there.
way! This 50% guy. If he doesn't win for us, like what can he stand for? And hey, look, here we go again. Him putting on great performances.
Sure. I mean, this was the only fight on here where I thought that it was a little bit closer than the judging made it seem. Uh, I watched it back in real time. I thought that it was a little bit closer than I did upon rewatch. Upon rewatch, I was like, okay, maybe it was not as close as I had initially thought, but I still thought it was pretty close. I thought both of these guys, again, this is another fight where you can say both of them were moving pretty effectively. And Ochoa wasn't like super, super, super close, but he was inching closer to a finish in that second round. I mean, if he had had more time on the clock, when he was on Kavanaugh's back, I thought that there was potential for him to cinch up the sub that he was going for. It wasn't going to happen from the position he was in when the horn sounded, but he was starting. So I mean, like it was. I think that the second round was a little bit closer than people were giving it credit for. I thought I didn't think that upon rewatch that it could have gone either way necessarily in the moment I did. I'm not mad at the decision, but I did think that 30-27s across the board, or at least from the one judge, rather, that one judge gave it 30-27. I thought that was a little bit crazy. So a unanimous decision win for Kavanaugh. Not the worst in the world. I thought that this could have been a split decision, personally.
I think one, the odds were kind of crazy. I don't normally go with the odds like anymore, just because I'm not gambling as much. So when I go into these fights and I see that this was like a really close matchup, like the odds really could have been screwed here. Ocho or Ochaya, is that what
Ochoa.
Ochoa? He he was really confident, and I think that was his downfall, is he kind of wasn't respecting what Lonnie was able to give back, and Lonnie was ripping him up with the kicks. You could, it was really, I honestly was starting to feel bad because I've kicked stuff and it hurts. And Lonnie's foot was like swollen and red, and like his whole leg was just jacked up from him doing the kicks.
Sure.
And he was doing a lot of leading the dance. I think he was slowing down, like you said. The second he almost got, whatever you want to say, almost got finished. They didn't give either of them a knockdown, which Anakin, am I missing that they both got knocked down like in this fight, or had Ochaya had never been knocked down before, but like did he get knocked down in this? I don't think I remember that. But
I mean, yeah, I'm not fully remembering either, honestly, if there was a full on knockdown.
mhm.
He might have been knocked down like quick and then jumped back up, kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I think that might have happened.
But I think, like I said, the confidence was just maybe he just wasn't respecting another undefeated fighter, and the third round came, and he just wasn't able to secure that win. It was starting off slow for him to a point where it was like, if it is 1-1, you're gonna have to go now and finish off what you left off in the second round. But he just, I don't think he was able to do it, in my opinion.
No,
Every round
I
I would,
agree.
yeah, every round I honestly think maybe because the Discord was wanting Lonnie. Maybe that was swaying me to give all 3 rounds, but I think confidently you could give 3 rounds, if not two, to Lonnie.
Yeah, yeah, definitely too. Again, after the rewatch, the win is fine. I'm not disputing that aspect of it. And of course, I wanted him to win too. I had money on him, and also shout out to Am, who is in the chat regularly. He stopped in for the watch along real quick. He is a student of Lonnie Kavanaugh, so I definitely was pulling for him. I think that you're definitely right about Ochoa being a little bit too showboaty, a little bit overconfident is probably
While he's getting
accurate there.
busted up.
Right. I mean, Bisbing was making that point on the commentary, and I agree with him 10,000%. And you see this time and time again, too, to the point where I'm like, it makes me wonder why fighters think that it's appropriate to be showboaty when you're not getting the better of your opponent. Like, it's one thing, like when a kick goes, when you slip a kick and like you do the looking over, whatever that, I guess,
Yeah.
the shielding of your eyes past past your head kind of thing or whatever. Like, that's one thing if it's like in the moment and it's one time. It's like if you're consistently doing the showboating thing and you're not solidly in the lead, then you're just kind of making yourself look like a bit of a fool, especially when it goes to decision and especially when you don't win that decision. So
Yeah, and it sucks because I honestly think he's surprised. With the coming in with number like that, you're thinking, oh, this is a can that, Lonnie's gonna get on his debut. But coming from shoot the box, he looked good. He looked good. And I think there's more for him if he comes in with a more composure, more weathered approach, like, okay, I have business to prove, not people to impress kind of deal.
I agree with that completely. The only other note that I had in here that I did want to touch on, only because it's more about a down the line kind of perspective when it comes to Lonnie Kavanaugh, was that we didn't necessarily see the same level of like determined explosiveness, I guess is how I would describe it, as we saw in the Contender Series. So I'm just curious if maybe he's adjusting his style based on being in the big show, or if is he trying to conserve energy, or like I don't know. I mean, like there was
I
just
think this was short notice.
oh, was it? Oh, okay, then
Yeah,
maybe
I
that was it.
want to. I want to say this was short notice. They were looking for a replacement opponent or something like that. I could be
Okay,
wrong, but maybe that's probably why he was a little in between, kind of game plans, kind of
fair.
deal.
Okay,
If
very fair if that's the
it,
case.
yeah, if it was like a game plan, like he's a really good wrestler. Like I think he would have implemented that more. But somebody from shoot the box who's probably like, oh fuck, I probably shouldn't try to wrestle a dude who's grappling with Charles Oliveira, kind of deal.
Sure. Yeah, but so I mean, I only bring that up to say, look, we all love an amazing knockout, and the one that Lonnie Kavanaugh had on the Contender Series was one of the best of all time. So I would be, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to see that replicated in the future if he is capable of it. Of course, being in the flyweight division where knockouts are, theoretically a little bit less, but now more on the come up with some of these guys that we've been seeing lately. I would like to see that replicated. So I'm just hoping that if he comes in full camp, all things being even, with an opponent that he can get the better of throughout the fight, that we see another explosive knockout like that. Just selfishly, I want that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I want to note, it sucks for Lonnie that, he's 5'4". Same thing as Josh Van. You're kind of doomed to be flyweight for the rest of your time here. If you go up to bantamweight, it's going to be a very tough challenge, especially because look at Ochoa. He was pretty tall
It's
for
true.
flyweight.
Yeah.
Five. I mean, 5'7" really isn't that tall, but he was a lot taller than Lonnie, so that should tell you something. But I think it'll be a tough challenge for Lonnie. But he's one of these dudes that he's proven that if he wants it, he can do it. Like, I mean, he didn't get a finish like we talked about, but he did um, want this win. Like, he did get it. So,
Oh yeah, for sure. So we'll see what he's able to do against some of these other guys that he's going to be facing. Of course, as we've said time and time again, flyweight and bantamweight, two of the most competitive divisions. And now that you're starting to see some more guys who are able to pull off these finishes in emphatic fashion, it's just going to be tougher and tougher. So I guess that's really what I'm ultimately getting at, is that I hope he's able to hold his own continuing down the line.
yeah,
So
he's somebody to keep looking out for. Like, when his name comes up, you're gonna know, like, oh, I gotta watch this fight.
absolutely, yeah, most definitely, and I hope that he is able to continue on, because I do like the way he fights.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on. This is okay. We had talked before this card started about some of these names on here, and I have no predetermined disposition towards any of these fighters. I want them all to do well. I want them all to show out and have the best performances possible. Again, in a selfish way, I was kind of rooting against this dude only because I didn't want to have to say this name time and time again, because it is hard. It's a lot of letters and hard to say, but it actually is not that hard once you know how to do it. It is Niemjergal Tumendemberel.
I think there's like a roll. There's a roll of the R for some reason at the tem. I don't know how to do it, but I think
Tumendemberel?
But
Brel?
but yes, I think that's they were doing that. At least Bisping was. So Niam Jargal was what I got, and that is really really cool. I think that's such a dope name. First off,
It is a cool name.
The Mongolian man, he came out here and he started off really slow. Like, I remember we were in the Discord. They had money on the Mongolian, of course, because this guy's a beast. Niam Jargal really
And he
is
was fighting
somebody.
Carlos Hernandez, by the way. I just wanted to get that out there.
Oh yeah, sorry guys. Yeah,
Niemjergal Tumendemberel versus Carlos Hernandez is the fight that we're talking about.
that was really good on the name. Just that was good. That was good for you. But anyway, so yeah, for flyweights again, you got to expect fireworks. And thank you. He did really good. So
Appreciate it.
Niam Jargel, first round it was a little slow, but the second round he was starting to make us proud. Like, okay, this is what we were waiting for. It just sucks that Carlos is a fucking good fighter, guys. Like, he actually is just like very decent. He's just well rounded, and he could just get the upper hand. Niam Jargel was trying. He had like a really tight sub. It looks like on the fucking thing, because they don't give subs unless you actually have these dudes about to die, apparently. So got a knockdown, got a sub attempt, but still lost with a split decision. Man, that's a tough one to lose on a bet. But it was a really fun fight to watch. So I can't really tell you too much. Like, it could have gone either way.
I mean, I think that it was a little bit crazy that it even was a split decision, because, like you said, I think that Hernandez won this fight just with solid fundamentals.
Yeah,
Yet another, I mean, I keep having to go back to the same note, but the same note stands for a lot of these fights. Good movement, and especially good head movement for Hernandez as well, because one of the big things for Tumendemberel was that he swings wild without finding the range. That was the thing that I had noticed the most. He has decent hands when he connects, but he just connected too infrequently. I mean, like, he's reaching for shots a mile away. It's like, bro, I mean, if you don't set that up with the speed that you need to throw from the distance that you're throwing, then there's really nothing for you there. And Hernandez was just capitalizing on all of that, just saying, okay, if you're going to throw from a mile away, then I will do, the more grounded thing, get out of the way, get my shots in when I could. I mean, he was capitalizing on all of these openings that Tumendemberel was putting out there, because there were so many of them. So, I mean, it was really a solid, grounded performance for Hernandez, which I appreciated. That's really all that I had to say about it. I did think that it was a little bit crazy that it was a split decision based on everything that we just said. But the one thing to keep in mind is that Tumendemberel had a motherfucking shaman in his corner. So, a little MMA black magic going on. I don't know. I don't
He
know.
tried. He tried his hardest, and and Yuri would not have approved. He would not have approved. He would have left. He would have walked in and said, "Nope, I'm not going. I'm not fucking doing it. I know there's something going on here." Anyway, so I remember picking Carlos, I think in his previous matchups. Honestly, no, I wasn't making predictions at the time when Tiara smoked him. So it probably was against Cyrua. God, these names are slipping my mind. I used to be able to say them but anyway, fun fact: his last three fights have been all regional fighters. I don't know what that's about, but Niam Jargel. If Anakin had him winning, I'm gonna listen because probably so. But Carlos, you've let me down a couple times, but it's okay.
I mean, fair enough. I like. I really think that it was one of those deals where it was the more grounded, more kind of by the book, so to speak, performance won out just by nature of it being more effective based on what was coming back at him. That's how I looked at that one. So if you saw it differently, then that's fair, I guess. But to me, it was a pretty clear cut case for Hernandez personally.
I think with some of again, it's people who come from the regions that we don't see very often. It's kind of like that underdog story. Like you just want to see them do it because what's next at that point? Like, is there another one that's going to be like them? So if Niam Jargel was going to come out here and throw haymakers, I'm just praying one lands because if listen, Carlos, I didn't mean that, but I'm just hoping a good shot comes. Niam Jargel gets a good finish and then we get some more Mongolian fighters. Like I don't know, maybe the shaman was what we needed, but obviously not. So
Well, and that's a good point too, though, is that there's nothing to say that against a different type of opponent that he couldn't use that style effectively. You know what I mean? There's going to be a guy that will fight with him where he's going to be able to use every one of those tools that he was trying to put out there more effectively. It's just that, what I would say to him if he wanted to kind of like have that same style is basically just to take all of the aggressiveness of it and just kind of box it just a little bit. Just take it down just a notch so that it's a little bit more controlled. Controlled aggression is what will get you farther when you're throwing as heavy as he was.
I think honestly, you're coming down to really what it matters. Like really, what matters is I think he's just whatever they say. A green is the term. I
Yeah.
think that's just what it is because the skills are there. Like he's able to defend some takedowns. Like he look 4 for 14 on Carlos's side. Like that's some good takedown defense. He didn't get any of his own, but he was at least trying. They got to the ground. He got a sub attempt. He knocked him down. The power's there. The technique, like we said, he kind of got outclassed in that department. If he works on it, the cardio, hey, I mean, listen, flyweights, you're going to get to the bell if there's not a finish.
Sure.
So he just needs to be a little less chaotic, hone in on what he's good at. The striking is there if he's, in the zone, but he needs to get in the zone first, work something that's going to actually land. Um, and I think there's something for him because obviously he's gonna be a fan favorite, man. Like this dude is so cool. Like
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on commentary, they were saying that there was a fight that they had watched of his in the past where he was able to really bully the other fighter. And I'm like, with a style like what he has, I believe that entirely. You know what I mean? Like seeing what he was doing there, the way that he was throwing, I'm like, yeah, there's a guy that he's going to be able to bully with that style for real. I think that if he wants to as well, like one of the other things too is to work on cutting off the circling because if he's able to get a dude up against the cage with that kind of striking, then there's not going to be anywhere for that person to run, and then he can really get it off. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different ways that he can just make minor adjustments, minor improvements, get down to the fundamentals a little bit better, and be the fighter that ends up getting the better of the next fight. So yeah, I think everybody wants to see a cool Mongolian with a shaman able to do his thing. So hopefully that happens for him, and we see him again.
yeah, I definitely won't be forgetting the shit that happens on this card. Like BG's talk about, it's about the memories you make. Listen,
That's
this I promise. With a name like that, I'm not forgetting you, brother.
and we talk about that element of this sport as well, right? Just sometimes the aura takes over the win. Sometimes if you can cultivate it,
Going
make
into the next fight, talking about aura.
let's fucking go for real. All right, let's move on. This is I mean, I would say that based on all of the circumstances around this has potential to be, I mean, with the BMF fight, it would be a long shot, but this is at least somewhere in the knockout of the year contention, like, maybe a honorable mention at the very least. This is Shi Ming versus Feng Xiaotan. What'd you think?
I want to first say that Shi Ming and her opponent, Fang, they were like, when they talk about styles and matchups, when you look at these two walk out, you have the tall, skinny, you have the short, stocky, and you're like, okay, this is like clear cut. Like the tall person should keep range, blah, 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 blah. Like I was even writing Ming off. Sorry. I was writing her off. I was like, man, there's just no way. Like I just don't see it. Shi Ming Business is the only nickname that she will ever need because she is about it.
Let's go.
I swear to God, I don't care. I know the story. She's a doctor. Her parents don't know she's a fighter, but listen, I'm with it. I'm on board. She is the queen of this division already. Like, holy shit. Like, I can't even explain it to you. And listen, we have somebody else that we'll talk about later who came in, did the same thing, got a knockout, and was up on the radar for a lot of people. So she's got to be able to replicate. And I did write her off once, so I apologize because I didn't know what she was capable of. But I am definitely watching the next fight that this girl is in. Shout out to the road to the UFC. Like, wow.
Yeah, this definitely made Road to the UFC stand out in a way that I don't think it has in the past. So I think that that's yet another credit to this card, because what we were talking about, what Anakin had mentioned a little bit earlier, that, you know, we've had fighters from that competition that, you know, were fine. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of where I'd put it, just where that they were okay. I mean, like, you know, they're sort of run of the mill, essentially, you know, not to be disrespectful, but, you know, nothing that had stood out as like, this is next up. But these performances here really elevated that competition to something that's like, you really should keep an eye on these guys coming out of there. And obviously these ladies as well. So definitely that for sure. To your point, Meg is shorter with short limbs as well. It's not only that she's just short, she is just short and compact in
Yeah.
general. So I mean, you could see the adversity that it caused for her earlier in the fight. To Anakin's point here, he's saying that Feng was winning and got unlucky. I mean, I think that maybe that's short changing Ming's overall performance just a little bit, but you could definitely see that Feng was you know, towering over her to an extent. And the one thing I did notice that leading up to it, though, leading up to this knockout, was that Feng just looked a little slow to the draw. And she looked, I mean, this could just be her facial expression. Apparently, she's a very reserved and shy person, but she looked a little uncomfortable in there. Again, this could all just be perceptional. I'm not saying that that's the case, but again, this is just body language and what I was observing, what I was perceiving from her. And so this fight was not like a super knockdown drag out up until this point, but just when you thought it was boring, the most perfectly placed head kick puts her out to the point where Feng had to be stretchered out of the cage, which was pretty scary. And thankfully, the commentary had said that she's okay. It was, you know, more of, I guess, just her being concussed probably than anything else. Her neck was all right. You know, the fall did look a little bit heavy. Obviously, she dropped like a ton of bricks, but she's okay. But the image was certainly jarring for a second there, and it even shook up Shi Ming in her post-fight speech. So crazy that she was able to do that with those short limbs. I mean, this is a really, really solid knockout to cap off what could have been, you know, otherwise just an okay fight.
I wanted to bring it up, you know, a couple fights ago, Lonnie, he in his debut on the Contender Series, he had a knockout that was like the dude was sleeping for like 4 minutes. Same thing here. Shi Ming put her to sleep for like 5 minutes. Like people were really worried. Dude, the camera angle that they had of Shi Ming standing there with like her face, like I might have killed somebody. Like I'm just standing here. The camera's just on me. She's just hands behind her, just
Yeah. So
waiting.
on the watch along at that point, after the knockout had occurred, I kind of went over to chat. I was, you know, kind of diverted my attention for a second. And then when I went back to the screen to see what was going on, it was just that static shot you were talking about. And I was like, what's going on right now? Cause they, you know, we're waiting for the decision to be read out, where, you know, all this kind of stuff, the ring announcements rather. You know, I didn't know what was going on. And somebody in the chat had said, they're like, they don't want to show a dead body on screen. And I was like, oh yeah, stretcher in there and all. So yeah, that was, you know, you could see that she was affected by it. That is the nature of this sport, of course. So things like that will happen. And again, she's okay, so thankfully that is the case. But yeah, it is always an uncomfortable image when you're seeing the stretcher, not only the stretcher, but the thing that always makes me uncomfortable about it is when they're strapping the head into the like that foam padding part. They have to do the Velcro across the top or whatever. It's always like, oh yeah, if she has neck injury or whatever, like it really drives it home, I guess. So she's okay, folks. Everything's all right at the end of the day, but that's what can happen.
I also would like to say, Shi Ming, and in her post fight, she was a little broken up with the situation. I don't know if you saw. I posted it on my Instagram story. There was her like actual post fight or whatever. Like after the fight, she was like, people. Maybe this wasn't. I think it was. She was like, people worry about me because I'm short and I have bad eyesight. She's like adjusting her glasses. She's like, but in the octagon, I'm the boss. And it was like, she's just such a beast, man. Like I don't know. Like she has like both parts of it. She knows how to capitalize on the moment, but she also like, damn, I really might have killed somebody. Let me kind of chill out for a second.
Yeah, all of that true, and also, as you had mentioned, she is a doctor with perfect English. I mean, her English was fantastic. So obviously marketable in that regard. Apparently, a TikTok star over there as well with a
Well, she's
good
just
following.
doing it all, ain't
Doing
she?
it all.
Like,
That's what I was going to say. She not only can send her opponent to the hospital, she can go there and treat them as well.
yeah.
So this is a quite a character that we've got here, and kind of an interesting way. So I like Ximing. I'm happy with this.
I think China, specifically China and the fandom over there, they should be so excited for what is next for Chinese women's mixed martial arts. Think about the China versus China matchups that we have. I know there's probably only been two, Wei Li and Yan, excuse me, and then Shi Ming and Fang. These were both bangers. Can we get more China v China women matchups? Like I'm just loving it. It's great.
Yeah, and it is interesting to watch the progression because I think I might have known this but put it out of my mind or forgotten about it over time. But Yan Xiaonan, who we'll talk about a little bit later on down the line, the first women's fighter from China in the UFC. So I mean, we're seeing this progression happen before our eyes here of this country, gaining its prominence in the sport, and it's really nice to see.
Yeah, 100%.
So great knockout for Shi Ming. She is now, of course, the Road to UFC strawweight winner, first female winner of that competition. I guess this is the first time that they had done female division there.
We can note that as well. We need every division road to the UFC, like every single one. I even said it in the chat, kind of just jokingly, maybe like we need a full card road to the UFC finals. Contender series can throw them in there, and then the tough finales, and then the tough coach finale. Like we need
That would be dope.
a whole card like that would be so fun
Yeah.
because I'm seeing what the road to the UFC people are doing. Like these are fun matchups.
Well, and
They are fun.
And I'm also glad that you mentioned that because so when we're talking about different divisions and whatnot, Laura Senko on commentary had mentioned that she used to fight at atom weight. Apparently, Shi Ming also fought at atom weight. There does appear to be some question or merit, I guess, raised here as to whether or not the UFC should have a women's atom weight division. With all of these fighters defecting from other organizations, which we'll talk about in a little bit farther on in this podcast, maybe open up 105 with Stamp as the champ in the UFC. What are you thinking?
If that's like a possible, like I wouldn't have even thought of that. So like if that's like something that you would believe or you deem something possible, like oh that sounds good. But I think it's the same situation. It's like we have like a handful of women who miss weight on the highest. It's like we don't need a full division for them. We're not going to get enough coming over and enough talent coming in and out to hold a division. Probably same thing with atom weight. It's like just get that extra 10 pounds, girl. Come on. Like, I'm not trying to be like that, but like maybe that's just what it is. Like,
I think it's a fair point. It really would depend on how many people they could get to fill the division out, and the whole thing with Stamp, I think, is a little bit of a long shot because I mean, with what's going on at one, if they lost Stamp, I mean, they'd be that would be like a nail in the coffin almost. I mean, their major stars they're having a lot of problems over there, as we've talked about. We'll talk about a little bit later, but yeah. So I mean, I don't know if it would be that, but it would be whether or not they could actually fill it out. I know Sanko was saying that she wants to see it. It's really a matter of if they can have enough people to build a roster off of.
Sanko better get her ass in the cage, become champ real quick. I'm telling you, we'll get more fans. Like, just give her the belt, let her walk around for a few. I'd watch something.
I mean, Sanko was not half bad back in the day. You know, I've seen some of her Invicta fights.
Good times, I'm sure.
Good times indeed. All right. Well, anyway, let's move on. Moving on to this is not Doo Ho Choi. And I know this because my good friend Chase Barton pointed it out to me when I thought that it was. I glanced at it and was corrected. This is Dong Hun Choi versus Kiru Singh Sahota.
Yeah.
Kiru Singh Sahota versus Dong Hun Choi. Slightly slow start on this one, but bang, bang, bang to finish it off. What'd you think?
I think Kiro Sahota, I think he got a lot of hate. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen a lot of hate for this dude. And I think it is honestly based a lot of the racial stuff. Like he's from England, but whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
So I
that
think
seems to be a trend online. The hatred of, or the negative conversation surrounding. Is he Indian or Pakistani?
I think that's what it is. I'm obviously, I don't want to
either one of
jump
those
to
two
it.
countries are very big magnets for negative comments online. We've been seeing this a lot lately, but yeah, that could certainly have something to do with it.
So anyway, I noticed that, and that's unfortunate because like when that happens, I sit here and think like, maybe you guys are writing him off too much, writing him off for the wrong reasons. Of course, like that has nothing to do with what he brings to the table, and it just sucks when they get put down an easy way that like this is an easy target type of way. It's like, well, this dude just got fucking destroyed. Like he just got rocked and fell down and got his head beat into the canvas. Like, yeah, see, here you go. So I think that's really all it stems from, and that sucks. We got to change the narrative, boys. We got to figure something else out because that ain't the way. Judge him on what he can do in the cage. Talk about how he gets knocked out, not about where he's, where he was originally from or where his parent, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I mean that's just a deeper problem, and I mean,
true. Yeah, what are we talking about now?
It's a deeper problem in the world at large. I mean, there's all kinds of we're in a very tumultuous time in history in general for a lot of different people and a lot of different reasons. But either way, I mean, all of that element of it aside, it is very unfortunate that he happened to be yet another person that had to get steamrolled in this way, because there's really not too much else to say, man. I mean, just when you thought that this one might have been boring because it was slightly slow to start, I mean, there was a little bit of time where I think I remember on the watch along saying it's like, okay, somebody has to engage here, because they were both kind of really feeling each other out for a good solid minute and a half. But once once Choi decided to get the ball rolling, that ball did not stop rolling, because that overhand right put Sahota to sleep for real.
Yeah, I want to say, let me see. I didn't really learn much from Choi. Like, I'm trying to see what kind of. I was looking at their past fights to see. Like, I felt like I heard that Sahota was like in the show like before. Like, this wasn't his first run, but his record doesn't look like that. So maybe I was remembering from Xiao Long.
Yeah.
So I didn't really learn much about Choi. I mean, he's obviously got the power, or Sahota's just got a very glass chin. It looks like that to me. He looks like he just failed to. He was just too frail. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we keep referencing the Lonnie Kavanaugh knockout on the Contender Series, but I think that it's very much similar to this. It's one of those ones where you don't really learn that much about the guy. It could very well be that his opponent just was a little bit glass-jawed. I mean, these are all completely valid explanations for what you saw, and we really just have to see how now Choi is going to look in his next fight, because we just saw how Kavanaugh looked in his next fight, and it was good and it was solid, but not. It wasn't go in there, knock the motherfucker out, and then on to the next one. So you need a fight where there's a little bit more meat on the bone to accurately assess the performance and the performer.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, for flyweight, like it could be for Sahota. Like he's probably super drained. He's 5'10". I know he's a skinny dude, but like you got to be at least bantamweight at 5'10", or you're probably gonna be glass jawed by the time you get to the fight. And so Choi, with power like that at flyweight, anything's possible. Like if you can knock people out of the flyweight and make sure you don't have to get to the next stage in that fight, bingo. But we're gonna have to see that next fight. We're gonna have to see the second, the Lonnie fight that we just saw. We need Choi to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and if they're both fighting at flyweight, I mean, Anakin saying Choi versus Choi would be a fight to make, perhaps. I mean, I think that maybe
That's
Kavanaugh.
different. It's got to be different weight classes.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a little bit a little bit of a stretch, but him and Kavanaugh are both in the same weight class, so perhaps that's a fight to make. Perhaps, maybe. I mean, they're both coming in a little bit new. I mean, a lot of times the organization will do older, veteran fighter versus new guy, but maybe new guy versus new guy makes sense if we've got a lot going on. Especially, we keep saying it over and over again, these divisions are extremely competitive, and there's a lot of guys wanting to fight in them. Then you got to trim the fat somehow if you're going to have these rosters that are fucking 400 people deep.
Yeah, flyweight, honestly, it's getting deeper, like, as we know it. Like, there's 3, 4 flyweight cards of people that we've never even seen on this one. Like, I mean, obviously, never even seen on this one, but, like, going back, there's probably a lot that have just been filled in. Like, we're getting a lot of flyweights now, and I really like that.
The same, yeah, absolutely. That and bantamweight. I'm telling you, these divisions are extremely competitive, and that's really more to the point. Is that, like, because they're so competitive, you got to shave off somehow. I mean, like, you're going to be ending up with a lot of guys fighting pre ranking. That how do you determine when and where people are going to actually shake out in the rankings if you've got that many killers before the rankings? You know.
I want to know with Anakin, I would do Choi versus Carlos Hernandez. I don't think saying things like that, naming people who just got wins on the card together, that's not far off because that's normally how it goes. Like you'll go back and look, and there'll be a lot of similarities between the fighters that are fighting different winners on the cards, and they're like matched up, and you're like, oh, these guys fought on the same card together, like this time, this time, this time. So like, you're probably not wrong. Like these dudes probably will face each other again. Flyweights, was that even a fight? Is Carlos? Yeah, flyweights. Yeah, so yeah, easy might be a
Yeah,
good option, or have Lonnie fight face Carlos and then give Ochoa give him Choi. That'd be
yeah,
cool.
could be. Either way, I like one way or another. You're gonna have to see shakeouts happening
Yeah,
because it's too competitive a division for it not to happen. So, all these guys vying for a lot of positioning when there's not a lot of positioning to go around, I guess, is the ultimate point that I'm making there. So we'll see what happens with all of these.
100%.
All right. So, I mean, not too much else to say about that one. It's, one and done, basically. Nice
Yeah,
overhand right. Put him out. So let's move on to the other name that was a little bit ridiculous here. This is, I'll start off with the easier one. This is Seung Yu versus, I think it's Berjang Jalisi. Or Jalisa. Jalisa is how we're pronouncing it on the commentary, which is very strange to me because there is an I at the end of that name. But so you have one I that sounds like an I and one I that does not sound like an I that sounds like an A. But either way, Suyang Yu versus Berjang Jalisa.
I think to start off, I won't have to say their names very much, maybe not at all, because this was definitely 100% the sleeper of the like not a sleeper on a good one. Like I was gonna fall asleep type of deal. Like these dudes, I think it was on Jalisi's side. He just was not that good of an opponent. You and so young. He obviously had more talent, more technique, and I don't know, for some reason, he looked very familiar. I don't know what that was about. Like when he showed up, like I just feel like I've seen him before. Maybe that's just something odd, but he just outclassed him, and it was just in a boring fashion. There wasn't much to offer on Jalisi's side. So
Did he look familiar because he kind of looks like a Korean Dylan Dennis? Probably not. Anyway, let's move on.
yeah, it took me. I got to think about it, but we'll come back to it later if we need.
Anyway, so yeah, no, I agree though. I mean, if there was going to be a fight that would, like, if you're ranking all of the fights on this card, which was pretty good card overall, I'd say that this was probably the lower, if not the lowest of the pecking order. This is really an example of kind of what we were talking about on the last podcast when we were talking about the Muslim Salikov fight. Again, that's coming up. Where we were saying that like one guy just has to be a little bit better than the other. We were talking about Song Kanon in that instance. That did not end up being the case. But in this one, this really was just an example of one guy being just a little bit better than the other. Yu was just better all around, especially on the ground. Although I did, he calls himself Yu Jitsu. I didn't really think that,
I
like,
didn't see it, brother.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? I mean, like,
Striking, like
yeah, it's a little bit of wishful thinking, I would say. To think that what he was displaying on the ground is going to be something worth naming after yourself. He definitely outworked Jalisa. Well deserved victory. Didn't show enough to make me see anything truly special. He is the bantamweight road to UFC winner now, so good for him. I think it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle going on down the line for him.
I think it's funny that you make it out like he calls himself Jiu-Jitsu. Nobody else does, and you see why. I mean, you see why nobody talks about them like that. I mean, maybe he does, but listen, I could
Yeah,
say whatever about myself.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, seriously, if we're just if we're giving ourselves accolades, then I could come up with a whole list of them too. But you got to show that a little bit more. And I mean, you could tell that he was better on the ground. I mean, that's it wasn't hard to do that with the level of competition that was coming back. So yeah, fine that you were outclassing him in that regard, or at least outworking him. At the very least, but it just wasn't enough to be like, okay, yeah, that guy just won the show, and I got to keep an eye on him. It's like,
Yeah.
nah.
No, it actually is crazy that all of the other roads. How many road to the UFC fight? Because Zhao Long he was already on it. Okay,
Right.
so
It's.
there
I
was
think that was the three of them. The
okay.
last two, and then this one was the three.
Yeah, I think okay. I know I talked a big game about the road to the UFC. We need a whole card of them. I'm looking back. That last fight, okay, with Sahota and then this fight, and I think the females really carried it. And then Zhao Long, I think that also plays a part into it because he did come from, the road to the UFC. Kwang Lee, I think, also did or whatever. But like these dudes, like they're proving why we want these guys in the UFC. So I would love to see more of them on the card because more potential for fights like that.
Well, yeah, and also, I mean, like, if you look at it based on what you were saying about having all of those finals on one card, with all of the way that these fights ended up shaking out, it would still be a pretty decent card. I mean, like, that it would have a lot of decent outcomes. You'd have a couple of nice knockouts, decisions. Yeah, you're going to get decisions. I mean, you're going to get some that are not going to be as banger as other ones, but that's just the nature of the game sometimes. So, I mean, I still think that it stands. I still think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I am kind of being harsh. I'm telling Choi over here, like, you did finish him in the
Yeah,
first round, but
you're
like,
fucking
it wasn't
annihilated.
like, yeah. So no, shout out him. They really did, and shout out. Listen again, shout out the translator, my guy in black, Yakuza's boy. I'm listen. If there's an interview out there, it's him because he knows something and he can tell you it in fluid English. You don't need a translator for him. He's that guy.
For sure. And
The fan.
even Fabiano, the Portuguese translator, was kind of dressed up in the black on black with the black tie action. So, the part was certainly set across the board as far as translators go.
Yeah, it was nice. It was a fun
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. So anyway, I mean, yeah, fine win for Si Young Yu. We'll see what he can do against a very stacked bantamweight division, but he's going to have to do a lot more.
Yeah.
All right. So that rounds out the prelims. Let's move on to main card here, starting off with the light heavyweight Zhang Minyang versus Ozzy Diaz. Diaz coming in after a loss on the Contender Series to Joe Pyfer. What'd you think of this one?
This is the second fight I showed my dad because it was really quick, and I was like, you'll get a good sense of like what the China card was like with Zhao Long and then Zhang Minyang. And I also want to point this dude has the squarest head ever. I don't know how it happened. I don't know, but it is like it is kind of aura. Like people know who he is. It's like, yo, that's and I was questioning at first. I was like, Mountain Tiger, that's an interesting name. But when you look at him, you're like, oh, like he like when you're walking around China, if you're him, like people would obviously think of you like that's the mountain right there. That dude's fucking huge. And I made a point earlier, his team, they are also just as big as him. I don't know what's going on there, but those dudes are probably coming over. Listen, light heavyweight for Chinese guys in light heavyweight, I know there's not that many. Zhang is obviously a beast getting all these first round finishes. He took losses earlier in his career, but this was just look. When I'm watching it, I'm watching him set up. I know it doesn't look like it because he's throwing a bunch of jabs, and that's basically what it was for a little bit. He's throwing jabs, watching Ozzy slip, watching Ozzy dip his head. Every time he throws a different, look for him, he's watching him dip his head right into it. And then right when it came up, that forearm, he cleaned him. I mean, it was just that easy just to set him up in the first round. Zhang Mingyang really is like locked in right now. That first round finish streak, it's like no joke. I mean, Ozzy might be a slouch, but it was no joke for Zhang to just hone that in the first round, get him out, and just get it over with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was an interesting call up for Diaz against Min Yang, who's been doing his thing for real, for real. Sad that he had to be the guy that got between the crosshairs here, but it was a wham bam, thanks Min Yang over here for sure. Because Diaz thought he was going to be able to get by on countering. They'd even said that on the commentary of the broadcast. No dice, my guy.
Yeah.
Min Yang was all over it, and that elbow KO in round one, man, Jesus, beautiful. I love an elbow forearm, lunge forearm KO like that. And this was one of distinction. This was really, really nice. And like you said, what you alluded to, just another of Min Yang's first round knockouts over here. This guy is a beast and a half. So really, really nice. Another feather in the cap there. And to your point about his team being as big as he is, yeah, I mean, I would think that just by nature of the build of people in the region, that a lot of these bigger guys probably have to train together just so that they can have comparable competition to what they'd be facing outside of the region. So it kind of makes sense that he's surrounding himself with equally large dudes, perhaps not as square-headed dudes, but either way,
Yeah,
he's
I
got his
I
people.
I dig them. Like these cards, I'm telling you, I don't know why we don't like. I'm hoping one day all the cards Saturday to Saturday are just in different regions. They're flying all over the world. Dana's going to be here. Dana's going to be there. I know that's not how it happened, but in theory, and we just have cards full of everybody from that region showing out because we get performances like this, and they're just really cool to see people from the region that like they're kind of unorthodox for their area. Like Zhang Mingyang being a light heavyweight from China is like, okay, he's like that's interesting. And the fact that he comes out here and gets you a first round finish. I don't remember about his post fight. Maybe he had some little he caught out Alex in his last fight or whatever in his debut or something. They said that. So he might have caught out somebody in this one.
He wants money. He said he wants a money
Oh,
fight, and he
okay.
wants a ranked opponent. So he's definitely got some stuff to say on the mic too. He's trying to be a little bit of a character himself. Show off a little bit of his intensity in the post fight. I was digging all of it, man. I really front to back. I thought that this was a really nice showing for the home crowd, and a good expression of who Min Yang was after his performance as well. So A+.
Yeah, 100%.
So there you go. Shout out to Checkmate and John Dong in the chat. Appreciate you guys. Casey, new promotion beyond Fight Pass. Okay, I'll have to check that out too. All right, moving on to one of the best fights on this card. Really, this was a serious strikers affair here. Carlos Ulberg versus Volkan Oezdemir. Great striking affair between these two guys. Very surprised that no one went out. What'd you think?
My initial reaction to what you said is like great striking affair. Okay. I feel like this was more of like a bar brawl type of situation. I don't know. I feel like Uzdemir was kind of throwing it out there. He is very technical, I will say. I love when he's throwing his kicks because he's got some pretty big legs and he could really like he's more mobile with his kicks than you would think a big guy like him would be. Olberg, I feel while I was rooting for him, I get this feeling that he's going to get the impression of like a dude who just is like running away or dancing away the entire fight. Like he's normally, I'm not seeing him like, and maybe I was, look, I see your faces that you're giving. Maybe I was falling in and out of it. Maybe this is where I was getting a little sleepy, but I don't remember that there was a time where like Olberg was like stepping forward, ready to take Uzdemir's like biggest shot. Like I feel like he was trying to slip away from everything, and I think he's going to get an image of somebody who doesn't want to engage as much. Maybe I'm wrong. But
No, I can kind of see that a little bit, but I think that what that comes from is just the fact that Carlos has really, really good head movement and is very fast with his own hands. So I think that the speed was really the difference here. And that Uzdemir he's a powerful guy. You can definitely see it in some of these shots, but he couldn't find the shots as readily as Carlos was, because Carlos puts together some really nice combos and he's really, really nice with the counters. That's why we were saying about like him go like marching down. Like I don't think that he necessarily needs to like go face first into any of these shots to prove his toughness. I think that he gets in there and at tight range, he gets some really nice shots off. Like because when they're in those exchanges that are at close distance, I mean, like he was countering very, very nicely. So I think it's just a stylistic thing with like the perception that you're having of him. Now, I will say though, when he's going to be going up against like the highest of the high in this division, I think that there are going to be guys that are going to be able to counteract all of what he's doing, because he does seem to be, in my opinion, just still one step below those highest guys in the division. But that being said, I certainly think that at this point he is ready to hang with them and test them out, you know?
I think what's also to note is that while I did critique the style and what he's done, what he did for the entire match, Uzdemir landed 28 leg kicks, which at a very high clip, 100%. That didn't slow him down. That did not slow Carlos's movement down as much as you would think, especially with how active he is for a light heavyweight. Like that dude is, like I said, prancing around. Surreal Gone is very active with his footwork, but like Carlos Ulberg is moving out side to side, left and right. Like I said, he's not moving in as much as I would love, but like this is light heavyweight. You're not going to sit there and take a big punch like that just willingly. So I think it is smart for him to play that game plan. The wrestling was also good to note that Uzdemir tried to initiate some grappling. It says twice, but I feel like that's a little shorthanded. He started trying to grab him, like, initiate something. And Carlos Ulberg was able to just not let that get to a position where he was going to have the lower hand, I guess is a better way to say it. So shout out to him for making it a striking match that he was able to win, I guess is the better way to say it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, really, I think this fight here shows that Carlos, like he needs to make like especially based on what you're saying too. Like he needs to graduate himself, so to speak. Like if you want to hang, because he's talking about top five, and I think that I would say that he's probably ready to at least get that test. I would think that like with his trajectory, with the win streak that he's racked up, it would not be out of the question for him to, yeah, like Anakin saying Rakic or Jan. I mean, like any of these names are probably appropriate at this point for him. But if he's going to be in that type of a fight, then he needs to show that like he can hang with that and lead the dance a little bit more. I think is correct, because I do think that he led here. I think that Uzdemir was a little bit of a step behind him, especially as the fight went on. Because
Getting
Carlos,
frustrated
he
is
was
what it looked
definitely
like.
that too. Yeah, absolutely. But also just that he is fast. I mean, like his speed is an advantage that he has. He's shown that in a couple of his fights that he'll be landing 3 or 4. His combos are really crisp. So all of
This
that.
is light heavyweight too. Like being fast is a very good asset. This isn't just being fast for flyweight or something like. I mean, I guess that is a good, whatever. But
Right.
this is fast for light heavyweights.
Absolutely. And so to that point though, it's like you're now going to be going up against guys like a Rakic, who is also a fast guy. You know what I mean? So it's
Who
like,
will also chew the legs up too.
and there you go as well. So it's like you need to set yourself apart is really the only note that I have for that aspect of it, because I did think that this was a really nice performance for him against an opponent like Volkan Oezdemir. You're not going to be fighting Volkan Oezdemir past this point now. So it's like you do need to make a choice here to be like, I'm going to set myself apart from the competition, and perhaps being a little bit more willing to stay in the pocket might be part of that. But I think it's really just a navigational element of how he approaches his fights. So we'll just have to see how it ends up happening against one of these higher level guys. But if he's in that fight, even against a Krylov or I mean, Jan to a lesser extent, because he's a little bit slower, that might actually be a good fight for him to, if Jan comes back after his layoff and they want to pair those two guys up, then, that could be a nice way for him to show that he is of the caliber that he needs to be. You're going to be going up against some guys who are not going to let you have the fight that you want, I guess, is also part of it.
Yeah. And I think we talk about stock and, people whose stock rises and drops. Volkan Oezdemir, I really think, in my opinion, his stock is rising because like last fight, he gets the knockout on Johnny Walker and he does this. And I didn't know what that meant. I'm just thinking, okay, that's his little signature thing. But it's because he wastes no time. And I love that about him. He's really walking forward, ready to just slug it out. Like I know I was critiquing Carlos for not biting down and ready to throw some. That's because Uzdemir was like that was what I was seeing for him. He's like ready to just engage, and when the striking wasn't working, he was just trying to grab him. Like let me just give me whatever you want to say. He was trying to shoot for takedowns. He was just trying to win the fight, and I get is because Carlos was just coasting and winning the fight at that point. Um, but Uzdemir, I really think stock is still there. Like he's not dropping. It was maybe like a -1 ish kind of deal.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that Uzdemir is probably cruising towards gatekeeper territory. Would be my gut feeling. Which again, I personally don't look at as like a super negative thing, like a lot of people do. Like that they like a lot of people will say that as in with a negative connotation. I don't personally see it that way. Depending on what he wants, if he's looking for the belt, that might be slightly out of the question. I would think, especially now with like the crop of light heavyweights that we have. But I see the value in the way that he fights as well. I picked him to win the fight. I had thrown a little bit of money on the dog. I thought that he was a solid dog, and if there was going to be a guy that would check Carlos Ulberg, that would have been the guy to do it. So if that ends up being the case for him, I'm not mad at that personally. His stock does kind of stay high for me as well because I do like the way that he fights. So, he needs to also kind of figure out his own trajectory forward, which I mean, at 20-8 now, it's a little bit late to just be coming to that conclusion. We'll have to see what version of him shows up next. But if it does end up being gatekeeperish, I wouldn't be too upset with that.
And I think, Anakin has a good one. Zhang, Ming Yang could be next for Vulcan. That's a good one because we need, going back to the last fight, Zhang is going to need a test, specifically somebody who has never been finished. Like, that's what it's going to be. It's like, we're not going to give you a dude who keeps getting finished. Like, it's got to be somebody who's never been finished. You're going to have to prove that you can finish the unfinished person. Let me double check. Has Vulcan Oezdemir ever been finished? Do we know this?
I I want to say yes, but let's
Yes. Okay. He definitely has. Yeah. 4 times.
okay. So yeah, so then
Well,
definitely yes.
but I mean, that's still not a bad opponent. It's maybe
I love got
yeah, okay.
knocked out by Cormier. I mean, that's
I mean,
that works.
2018 though. I mean,
Yeah,
or 2020. Okay, Yuri. Dang.
Yuri. I mean, these are
And
obviously high level guys.
unfortunately, I was thinking like specifically Yuri. I was like, ooh, Carlos like Olberg. I think if any of the top ones, he could probably get over on Yuri just because he doesn't fucking block. Like that's specifically that. And his speed, Yuri's just gonna get overwhelmed and do his fucking like he's just gonna get lost probably. But that's just me on that one. Vulcan. I don't know what's next, man, but I do like watching you fight. So hopefully it's again soon because you didn't get finished. Light heavyweights, you got to make money. Fuck it, just get back in there, brother.
Well, and that's what I mean about the gatekeeper status. Like, I'm not mad at that if he's out here wanting to support his family, kind of thing. If he just doing it for the love of fighting, whatever his reasoning is to stay in the game, there's plenty for him. And you're exactly right about like it's not like you go out there in like complete slouch form and everybody's like, why did I watch this fight? Like that's never at least in my experience, never been like what I think of when I think of a Volkan Oezdemir fight. So I think that there's absolutely a place for him. It's just probably not a forward motion kind of thing. I mean, I think light heavyweight Neil Magny is, about what we're at the point of getting with him, which to me, not a bad thing.
Yeah, I could get with it.
All right. Well, then we will see what happens with Carlos Solberg as he goes on, because, like I said, I think that he is probably going to be getting some pretty decent competition going forward. But as far as hype trains are concerned, different topic of conversation, but a derailment nonetheless. Tong Wang versus Gabriela Fernandez. Hype train indeed derailed, my guy. What'd you think?
Um, Probably could have seen it coming. probably could have seen this one coming just because she's like just a goofy little girl. Set minus 1700, and she arguably lost to Valentina in the match that everybody's praising as like something that she was like a crazy feat for her, which it is. I mean, going to decision with Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing, sure. But Wang Tong, we probably could have seen her getting submitted very easily coming. But the fact that the situation that had happened was she kind of got fucked up, guys. She got rocked, got dropped, and then got choked out. And
Yeah.
she took it very well. I'll give you that. She got up and she was like, we'll get him next time kind of attitude. But maybe that was the problem. Like, you're doing a little too much, acting like the fucking Joker. And you clearly weren't fucking ready to get punched in the face really hard. Like, damn you. So,
Yeah. I mean, I want to give Wang Tong a little bit of credit here as far as what happened earlier in the fight. Um, Tong takes round one pretty handily in this fight, and you could definitely see her power in that round. Uh, in that round, though, I will say there was one that Fernandez landed that I was like, oh, okay, she's got power too, though. So I was like, all right, there's definitely more going on here than just this being a completely one-sided Wang Tong performance, like off the bat, which is exactly what we saw in the last fight, which gained this hype status that she had coming into this fight. So I also want to say that she mixes up her shots nicely. She goes to the body a whole lot, which I appreciated. But that's about where the praise unfortunately ends in this one, because that second round, Fernandez found the head kick that stunned Tong, and then some nice boxing let her find that left hand that really was the drop. And you can see that Fernandez has some power of her own, which was really impressive against obviously someone who had a lot of hype coming, surrounding them.
yeah, did you see Fernandez after she got the win? Like, dude, she was scary the way she was yelling in the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot of emotion going on there. If you heard her post fight, she had some loss in her family, actually a lot of loss, two major losses in her family not too long ago. So a lot of emotion. And we talked about this a little bit earlier in the podcast here, but going over to China, enemy territory with an opponent, the crowd behind Wang Tong they were biting on every single thing she was doing. Anytime that anything landed, the crowd was given the woo, big
Yeah.
reaction to everything. So, I mean, for her to come in as the biggest underdog on this card, with all of those factors being as they were, and, especially the personal life stuff, I think that it all made perfect sense. And congratulations to her, man. I mean, because this really was what would seem to have been an uphill battle, all things considered. And to be the biggest underdog and get it done like that, really impressive.
I'm trying to think. I remember making a mental note, but now I'm trying to think on which fight it actually was like an issue. There was something going on. Somebody was clapping in the crowd that sounded like the clapper. And I feel like there was a
Mm.
fight or two that like they did that and like they like kind of had like a weird disengagement type of thing, or it was like close to the real clapper and then the real clapper happened like after it was. I don't know. I feel like that was a mental note I made on one of these fights.
I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to go back and rewatch to catch that. But um, either way, if that was the case, and that is a strange thing to have happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I brought it up on this fight, but I couldn't remember which one it happened. Yeah, there was something weird going on. But either way, yeah. Shout out Gabriella. She really got this one done. And like you can't ask for more when women get finishes. I know
Absolutely.
I talked about Choi earlier and I slighted him and I apologize. But Fernandez, like when women finish, like you can't do anything but go crazy. Like that's good shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only other note that I had there regarding the finish was that I appreciated that when she didn't have the rear naked choke initially, she adjusted to get it to where she needed to get it, which is always something that you want to see. It's like you a lot of times when, especially after a heavy shot like that, where it's a sequence that it could have like a lesser fight IQ person could have pulled the Jalen Turner and thought that it was a walk off. She didn't do that, which is a smart thing to do. And then when she didn't have the initial choke, she went and got the choke that worked. So really all around great job.
Yeah, and To the point that we always make is like we look at the people that have these really low records and they're in the UFC very early, and what do we expect when they lose? I think this is just she was doing fine, doing her thing, and we always get people who are good in their groove. This is mixed martial arts. So hopefully she's able to learn from this. She's able to get some better grappling, or at least I know she got stunned and knocked down. Like I can't really expect her to just not like so just come in with a better mindset. Don't be, still do the Joker thing, but maybe pick a different shtick kind of version of it so you don't get beat up. Like, I don't know.
So you want to see the Harley Quinn now? That's what you're recommending?
I like go dude, just get a different adaptation of the Joker. I don't know which one you're doing right now. You're doing the
Oh,
Wang Tong and you're doing the Wang Tong one. Get a different version, and then try it again.
go 1960s Cesar Romero Joker. That's
Get
that's
the
my
mustache
recommendation.
and everything and just exactly.
There you go. All right, fair enough. But yeah, either way, really a nice win. Again, as the biggest underdog on the cards, great upset for Fernandez.
100%.
All right, moving on to a guy that we had nothing positive to say about coming into this fight, pulling off a beautiful knockout of his own here. This is Muslim Salikov versus Song Kanan. What did you think of this spinning wheel kick that sent Song Kanan to the Shadow Realm?
I honestly, gosh damn, the king of kung fu, man. Like you really just can't say much about it because we really just have to eat our words. We really suspected, at least I did. Muslim Salikov had dirt on Dana White. How was he the third fight from the main event once again on a main card in China of all places? Like, what are you doing here, dude? And then here we go. He comes out here and he says, "I'm just going to kick his head into the stratosphere." So that's really all it is. And he, God, for a 40-year-old man, just give him, you know what, give him good competition now. Yeah, I need him done. I'm tired of it.
You want him out and eliminated. We need somebody to come in here and really show out, huh?
Gotta be.
I mean, yeah, it is interesting for exactly the points that you mentioned there. That I mean, because we were judging very much off of the Santiago Ponzinibbio fight as to how we felt about this fight when it came to Muslim Salikov, and I think that we were not unwarranted in our assessment there because that fight was two guys that looked very much past their prime and not capable of doing what we saw in this fight. So to see him after that performance come out and do this was pretty unexpected. Can he replicate against somebody who is not Song Kanan, who we had even said on the previous podcast has been pretty spotty himself? I mean, he's kind of coming up at the point where these losses are starting to creep up. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, and listen, I'll give some praise. Muslim, you do know how to execute some like you might be the Russian Bruce Lee at this point. Um, because you know how to execute some good ass moves. You did some spin kicks in it, not just the one that landed. You did some to the body. And you're just that drunken master style. Like you really just know how to go out here as a 40-year-old man and just like show these young whippersnappers what's up.
Pretty much. I mean, 4 spinning kick KOs on Solikov's record before this fight. Make that 5 now.
That's
I, you know,
ridiculous.
yeah,
Like
it's
that
pretty
is
crazy.
ridiculous.
It just seems like it's extremely rare at the higher levels in general. You know what I mean? Like when you actually see a spinning wheel kick land as flush as it did to actually achieve the knockout. Because even when you get them flush, a lot of the times, like did it land in the right spot? Did it land in the right position on the leg slash foot to create the impact? Does it lead into a different sequence? It's like it's very rare that it is just kick to head, end of fight.
Here's what I think, and I'm not trying to plug myself. When I am at the punching bag or whatever, I normally do the spin kick. Like I think it's just fun to do, like just to do a pirouette and do a high kick, heel, spinning back kick. I think Muslim Salikov just really likes to do spin kicks because you'll see him. He'll do the spin kicks, and then that last one, he set it up perfectly because he faked it going to the body. It's hard to see. He you spin and you got the knee and then he went up top and it was just perfect execution. And I think he just actually does enjoy just doing that kick, setting that kick up. Like I know I can they're gonna think I'm going to the body, and just when they do, they're gonna lower their hands, and I'm gonna kick them in the head. Like, what are they gonna do? Listen, we talk about knees and elbows. It's like things that are like really, really hard in your body. Your heel, bro, kicking somebody with your heel while you're spinning, like it hurts. It's gonna hurt. So he clearly is just an old man doing his thing. And I really appreciate him, even though I'm gonna give him shit every time because he don't need to be doing. There's no reason that he's out here doing this. This is the UFC, the highest level. Muslim Salikov, you're fucking 40, like brother. It's crazy.
I mean, 40 or not, when that kick lands flush, beautifully placed shot, I got to give it up to the guy. So
Yeah,
congratulations to Muslim Salikov. I mean, that's really all she wrote on that one. So good job.
yeah. Shout
Shut
out
us
him.
right up.
Yeah, it would be it would be ironic that he does like my favorite type of thing to do, like and finish somebody. I'm like, wow, now I gotta like admire that he does it better than me. Like, fuck.
Hey, when you're hot, you're hot. What can you say?
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of on I mean, not a streak, but someone who is definitely hot on the night, Yan Xiaonan versus Tabitha Ricci. You want to talk about outclassing your opponent? Good Lord, was Yan Xiaonan on in Macau?
This okay. When you talk about hot streak for Jan, this was the coldest performance that anybody could ever have coming from Ricci. Like she was just so bad. She had nothing to offer. At the end of the first round, she had 0 strikes landed. It was
That is wild.
and I actually applaud Jan. She came in here after a brutal performance, and I actually want to make the note. You thought this was a dominating performance. Look at the numbers compared to what Whaley did to Jan. Like it's not even close. So I just think it's crucial to note the levels to this. But
Sure.
Jan, she did have a dominating performance, and she looked really, really good. I like Jan. Like I actually think she's a really good fighter. She's huge for this fucking weight class. Like she's,
Yeah.
dude, her like she's like jacked.
Oh yeah.
So she can crack. Tabitha Ricci can just not be this level. She's not that good. Maybe a different opponent, but not Yan in China. And she did vow to get the belt. So I really listen. I'm intrigued to see what her story is next. Like you said, the first Chinese woman in the UFC. Whaley's obviously the champ, but it seems like Whaley's time is coming close to an end here. Yan Xiaonan, though, she's looking really kind of on the she's more, I'm trying to think, not more on the way, but I think there's still more to her story. While Wei Lee is just like, well, she's just the champ. If she loses the belt, is she going to go get it again? I don't really think kind of so, but who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that we've talked about this in the Discord, or I've seen it discussed in the Discord. I don't know if we've talked about it on the show though, but I mean, Wei Lee has been out for quite a while. Is
Her
there?
ass was at this show. Like,
Yeah, I
what the
know.
hell?
She was sitting in the crowd. I'm like, you're in the crowd. When are you going to be in the cage? Like, is there I mean, is she injured or like what? Do we know why she's been in this inactive? I'm curious because I had made the point about Jan Blachowicz being out for a while, and then on the watch along, somebody had mentioned that he had double shoulder surgery. So I was like, all right, well now I feel like a little bit of an idiot. He's been
Yeah,
inactive for a reason. But I mean, Zhang Weilei, like she just it seems like it's been forever because I had looked and I was like, was the last fight that Yan Xiaonan fought against Wei Li, and it was. So I mean, it's just been a long time for both of them fighting, and Wei Li is sitting on that belt and has not defended it for quite a while. So I was just curious if there was a reason for that.
I'm looking at her Instagram because I wanted to just verify. Yeah, she only is just posting like workout videos of her lifting and stuff, which makes me believe there's either two options. I'll actually oh, okay. 2 options. 1, she's bulking up, she's gonna go fight Valentina. That's the way it goes. She would have to go up, right? Or does Valentina have to go down? I don't know.
She's fighting strawweight. I believe that Wei Li has to go up. I think. Don't quote me
Okay.
on that.
Well, yeah, well, that's one option, and maybe that's coming up after Valentina takes a break because Menon is not the fight that anybody wants. So, um, or this was my super theory, but I don't think it's likely because she's posting and we just saw her literally in China. Maybe she was pregnant. That's something that can happen with women, guys.
That is a good point. That is something that can happen with women. Um, I it could be. I think that we might have heard about that if it was the
Why
case,
would
but
you? Who would
uh,
tell you? Would you
uh,
even? It would be in Chinese, brother.
I mean, MMA press would probably know. Or
I don't know.
uh,
That's like personal stuff. Maybe she was like, I'm gonna okay after 300, then I'm getting my life together.
yeah,
I
it's
don't
true. I
know.
mean, I guess you make a good point. Like her personal life is not really like super front and center. It's not like we have like like a very large information base about what her personal life is like. So it's not out of the question. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the reason is. This is all speculation either way. But whatever the case may be, it's just when you have a champion, you want to see that belt
Yeah,
defended. I mean,
get the
that's
fucking belt defended,
yeah,
especially
yeah,
when you got somebody who listen, I would not be because there's nobody else that could be fighting Whaley right now other than Suarez, who's injured again. So if Jan wants to run it back, if Whaley's down for it, if she cannot make it, if she can make it a little competitive, I'm down to see it. China versus China again, I'm down.
sure.
But Jan, I don't know. It is a tough ask to say, let me get another rematch against somebody who dominated me.
Right. Yeah, it is true because it was a complete domination, much like this fight with Tabitha Ricci. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I did want to say about Ricci's performance was that it's not like she was a complete like inactive punching bag. She was pushing the pace a decent amount. She was keeping pressure on at times, but really the biggest difference there with like the levels to the game kind of thing was that Jan left very few openings for Ricci to capitalize on. That was the big separator to me. It's like when she did have there was one time in this fight where Ricci nearly had any kind of opening to draw from, which is when she almost had her back, that little scramble where it almost went to the ground. She couldn't secure it. So it's like
Yeah.
Yan Janan was just so locked in this fight. I mean, it was just yeah. I mean, levels to the game is all you can really say. I mean, she was out there trying, Ricci was, but there just wasn't anything to bite on. And I mean that's what an outclassing is.
Yeah, 100%. The numbers, honestly, people had a lot of faith in Ricci. I kind of just never saw it, to be honest. I thought going into this, I knew Jan after dropping Whaley, whatever you want to say, a couple times, questionable. I just didn't think Ricci had anything to offer. I think Jan was going to be able to do just what she did, have this very technical striking performance. She didn't do it. Look, when you're that good of a striker, you don't shoot for takedowns, and she doesn't do that. She's ready to stand and trade and just outclass, and that's what she did.
For sure. And the one thing that I had heard, I think that it was Uriah Faber was talking about Jan. Uriah Faber trains her regularly, and he was saying that she took a lot of confidence away from the title fight, even in defeat. And I was like, that two things from that. One, that's I mean, like obviously she's using it to a good effect, so that's a nice plus there. But two, that is a champion mindset to have. Like if you walk away from a fight where were roundly defeated, but still took like a confidence away from that. Like I was at the point of almost having the belt, and you didn't like because there are people. I mean, we've seen this plenty of times where fighters will get to that point and it will crush them that they were not
Yeah,
able to achieve the belt. If she was able to turn that into a positive, that is, as far as the mental game goes, shows a very great strength on her part. So I really give her a lot of credit for that. And to be able to transition that into the performance that she had, really, really nice work. I mean, I can understand people having a faith in Tabitha Ricci being 11-2 coming into this fight, but when you actually saw it in practice, I mean, the odds probably should have been a lot higher in Jan's favor. But there you go. I mean, we talk, or at least you're often one to say, "Oh, these odds makers know more than we do." I think in this one that it was a little bit closer than it should have been.
speaking of odds makers know more than we do. Listen, this next fight,
Yeah, let's move on to it. Main event. This is Piotr Jan versus Davison Figueiredo over here. Man, what a banger this turned out to be.
wow, I'm more upset that I was wrong.
Same.
Like I really thought Figgy was gonna like it's just not his game to have volume. Like that's just really what we got to accept. Like he really is just the sniper rifle type of fighter. And that is good because he can make it competitive even when he's getting, outclassed up until the 5th round. There was some times in between sprinkled out that he was doing really good. But Petr Yan god damn, is it really good to see a dude who can just box his ass off. Like, and not just box his ass off, but do the little things like the little trip he had. Oh my goodness.
Oh
Like that
yeah,
was
that was gorgeous.
the fact that he ragdolled Figgy was like it just you're watching fights and I'm gonna bring up Ilya and Max. It's like you're watching just like what you know somebody to be or what you believe somebody to be, and they just are able to take that image away from you. It's like I know Peter Yan is like a great boxer, but I didn't think Figueiredo was somebody who was gonna get outclassed like he did. He just seems like the type of dude that is gonna be able to figure it out and fight through it. I want to also make a note he was getting down on himself. You could totally tell in the corners. He like his eyes were watering up. Like, man, I'm fucking up. Like this was my chance to get back in the conversation for another belt type of deal. And I feel like he thought a little more than that. This is a hard matchup. You're obviously going to get another chance, Figgy, but Peter Yan was just fucking on his shit, man. God
Right.
damn, he was on it.
Yeah. I mean, the boxing is just next level, and it was so nice to see it on full display here. Um, yeah, I thought that for a guy like Piotr Jan, who is notoriously slow to start, I thought that Figueiredo didn't let him do that, didn't let him be slow, which I very much appreciated. And it was great to see that when put to task like that, he was able to rise to the occasion like no problem. You know what I mean? Like, because there are some times in the earlier Piotr fights, at least, where he's what they always say is the downloading the information. He's slow to start because he's gathering the necessary elements that he needs to create the game plan that's going to work for him later in the fight. Figueiredo didn't let him do that. I think that's my ultimate note for the other side of this fight, because really the story of the fight, of course, is Piotr Jan and his boxing. His amazing uppercuts were fucking fire. But on the other side of the coin, I would say that Figueiredo made this fight a lot closer than I think people are giving him credit for. I think that it was kind of absurd that this was 50-45s across the board. To not give him at least a single round seemed a little bit crazy to me. I think that there was at least one in there. Because I mean, he had Jan hurt a couple of times, like in that fifth round, like when that was actually one of the funnier moments of this fight was when Lorisenko, Figueiredo had landed a nice body shot, which looked like it had buckled Jan late in the fight, and Lorisenko was like, "This is still anybody's fight," and Michael Bisping's like, "No." I was like, that is kind of funny. But
Yeah.
I mean, to the point though, is that like you could see that Figueiredo was he was not completely like he was just behind. He was just a step behind. And like you said, he's not the volume is not the same. He's not the same type of striker as Piotr Jan is. He wasn't able to do anything really on the ground either. So it's like if you're neutralizing all of the best aspects of Davis and Figueiredo, this is the type of fight that you end up with. So like I think that overall it was not so one-sided that like people were because people are really dogging him, saying that oh, this was a complete knockdown drag out. And yes, Piotr Jan did amazing in this fight. I'm not taking any of that away from him. And I'm a big fan of Piotr Jan. I've seen every single one of his fights in the UFC. I specifically make him appointment viewing because I like the way that he fights. I just think that Figueiredo deserves at least a little bit of respect for holding his own throughout, getting to the decision even. I mean, this could have easily been a lesser fighter would have been fucking dropped by some of these shots.
Yeah, I think the things that I'll note also is Peter Yan, like we said, he's normally the type to do to download data and then go after it. In this fight, I appreciate that he came in with he watched film apparently. Normally he has to download the data. This time he watched film because he came in off the bat knowing Figgy just didn't have it for me. I'm gonna be able to just play my game and I'm gonna do it very, very well. Figgy was trying to what's the word I'm looking for? He was trying to invest in the body. Like you said, it did kind of pay off maybe in the fifth round a little bit, but I think he didn't expect Peter Yan to just be a dog. Like we body shots, like come on, like I'm just gonna box your head off, brother. Like and it's just such great fucking skill that Peter Yan has. I think it's also great to note that he doesn't want to fight Sean O'Malley again. He already beat him, he says. Hey, fuck it. I'm with it. So
Fair, because I was going to say that it's probably the fight to make. I think that Umar is definitely getting the shot, or I would expect that at least. It just makes sense, and for a guy to jump up in the rankings the way that Umar did, I think the story, plus the regional aspect of it, I think that the narrative is already there for him to get the shot. So I was going to ask what you think that is next for Petr Yan.
Um, it would be cool to think that Marab or Umar or Sean is an option, which it might be. Oh, I forgot to say Corey Sandhagen called out Petr Yan. Like, brother, you just lost. Like, get up out of here.
Yeah.
So Sean would be cool to have a 5-round fight. I think that would be really nice just to see what later rounds of that would have panned out to be, because that was kind of close. Those 4 and 5 rounds, though, if we would have had them, say if we would have had a scenario like Tough, where it's like, okay, if it's close, then we have extra rounds. Like if it was something like that,
Sure.
those 3rd and 5th rounds, they would have really been deciding factors to like who would have been champ next, really.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people were saying that at the time that a 5-round fight would have, made the closeness of that not as, it would have divided it a lot better had it had those extra rounds. So I think it makes perfect sense for that to happen. Something tells me that he'll take that fight if that's what they want him to do. But either way, it was really nice to see the full extent of Jan in like rare form, and like in the prime form that he has been for quite a while. I mean, this was a vintage Petr Yan performance, in my opinion, and Davis and Figueiredo just not able to keep up. Which is, I mean, look, who can? It's like,
Yeah.
it's tough.
I was gonna say. I mean, you look at the ages. Like Petr Yan, he's in perfect timing for like a career resurgence type of deal.
Sure.
Maybe, I mean, argue that he fell off or not. Like he lost his belts on some weird stuff, and then, didn't get the belt back because of split decision or whatever it was with Aljo. And then Sean, it's kind of just a rocky road for him at this point. You can't really say the skill is declining, and this perfectly showed like he can do whatever the fuck he wants. Like, look at the striking numbers, just like how accurate he was too. Figueiredo is not a bad fighter. It just unfortunately seems to be that he's 36 years old at bantamweight. Might not be his time anymore. So and this is a hard fight, and I probably will root for Figgy in his next fight because he just has that championship winner mentality. Unfortunately, Petr Yan broke him this fight mentally, physically, and that's just how it was.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see because I think both of us were riding with him, and like I said, I don't think that this was like the worst loss that could have imagined for him. I mean, this could have been a lot worse for him. I think he was able to hold his own, against a lot of adversity. I mean, that's the big part of this, right? I mean, we're kind of down on him, but this we talked about the Yan Xiaonan Tabitha Ricci fight. Like, both of them were able to at least make it to a decision against like striking that would have crumpled lesser opponents.
Yeah.
So, there's definitely something to be said for that aspect of it, that these are tough people able to withstand a lot of intensity. But I mean, this is the Petr Yan that like you always want to see in fights. He was able to do everything that he wanted to do, got the entire game plan off to a T. And I mean, this is champion level for sure.
No, exactly. This is what high level striking looks like.
Yeah, most definitely. So, I mean, I guess that's about it for that. We'll see what they decide to do as far as his next opponent. I think that a lot of people are probably going to be okay with the O'Malley rematch if that's what the organization wants. Make that a 5-rounder. Guys who are going to go out there and strike. You're not going to have to worry about a Marab style fight, Marab Umar style, where it's going to be very grapple heavy. I think it makes perfect sense. So if that's what they end up doing, I think everybody's going to be pretty happy with it.
100%.
So that is UFC Fight Night, Yan versus Figueiredo. Pretty entertaining and good time to be had at 3:00 in the morning, I would say.
Oh, yeah. It was definitely an experience. I would love to do it again. I'm not saying I want to do it this weekend, but the next time it goes to China. Actually, one last thing I want to know. I hope
Sure.
next time they go to China, they have more aerial shots in the breaks. I want to see what these areas looks like, not just China. Whenever we go to different cities, whenever there's pauses, whenever there's breaks, I want more aerial shots of the surrounding area. I want to see it. Like,
Fair
show me
enough.
where I'm at.
Yeah, you want cultural enrichment on top
Thank
of your
you.
fights. I can appreciate that, sure. But good times, yeah, definitely. I mean, my sleep schedule is still catching back up, so maybe not next week is something I can certainly echo, but this was a good time overall.
100%.
All right. Well, that does it for the review of last week. We got two more things that we wanted to talk about today. One of those being, let me switch on over here. Uh, we wanted to at least touch on this because this is something that I had covered on a secondary additional stream a couple of weeks ago. It was actually the same stream that I covered the Rose Namajunas situation that I made a video about. You can go and check that video out on the channel if you are interested. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to do an entire video about this just because there's really not that much information that has come out about the intricacies of the proceedings, but I thought it was something that me and Chase probably have at least slightly different opinions about, or could have at least an interesting conversation about. So we wanted to at least mention this. Conor McGregor has been found liable, so not guilty. Guilty is the wrong
I
phrasing
thought
there.
that was okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember they kept saying guilty, and then I saw a headline saying finds liable. I'm like, that's a different word. That
because
doesn't mean guilty.
right. So this is the thing with this is that this was a civil trial. Conor McGregor has been found liable for sexual assault in this civil trial in Ireland because the original charges that were leveled against him when these allegations were first made a number of years ago now, I believe that this was 2018. Those charges did not stick as far as the Irish police wanting to pursue them. They claimed that there was not enough substantial evidence to pursue criminal charges, so they were thrown out. Nothing criminal ever came from these allegations. However, this went to a civil suit in Ireland, and he has been found liable for these charges against him of sexual assault. The short version of this, and I want to keep this very brief because there's a lot of intricate details that we don't really have time or need to go into, but the short version is Connor was partying with a woman who is not his wife. They were in a hotel room. Things got sexual. She's claiming that it was not consensual. He's claiming that it was. There are a number of details on both sides that kind of can lean you one way or another. Um, it's a messy situation that really is not clear cut. Is I think the best way to put it. So all of that being said, Chase, what's your overall opinion about this? And I'll kind of go off of that.
I think one, it is weird that he's not found guilty. That is specifically not what he is. Like, I think people need to note that. But you also need to note that this dude, whatever he says happened that night, you have to be aware that he was under the influence of many different things. He is somebody that you know, what is his opinion? What is his word? Who is he? I know he does a lot of things. He makes a lot of money and he fights in the cage. But like, if the truth is that many different doctors, physicians, therapists, help places were all able to verify that these were um, accurate identifications of a situation of sexual assault. Listen, who am I to side with the fucking drug addict? Like, I mean, I I don't know when you really break it down to the facts. There, like, I don't want to be that guy who's siding with that person if it is true, but I also can't accept and I can agree that the people who are siding with somebody who makes up false reports and things like this, if they end up looking stupid, it is very bad on them too. So it's just the situation is a whole thing that when you really like look into it, you just maybe don't even feel good about having an opinion on it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I could kind of understand that. I think that that's the same basic takeaway that I had when I covered the Alex Pereira allegations with that accuser. Is that there's no winners in situations like this. Obviously this woman now, has however many dollars. I think they're saying it's 248,000 euros out of this. So, oh yeah, you can say that she won, quote unquote. there's no winner. I mean, if she is the if the suit goes in her favor, she is still theoretically either the victim of a crime or she is a liar about a crime. In Connor's side of the equation, with the case going one way or another, he is either a person who has perpetrated a very heinous crime or someone falsely committed of a very heinous crime. So there is no winner in a situation like this. Um, it's tough to make a full on assessment of the actual details here because going through some of the details that have been released, there are a lot of things that are conflicting. There's the detail about this woman being seen kissing and hugging on him after the alleged assault took place. That's something that's kind of damning on one side of the equation. There's also the fact that, we're talking about Connor being under the influence of a lot of stuff. So was she. I mean, she was doing the exact same things that he was doing with him at the time of this all happening. Um, I think the biggest thing I want to say about this, and I said it on the stream as well that I had done about this, is that I think that the biggest miscarriage of justice in this case is the fact that it did not go to criminal proceedings initially. Because this is something that if there is enough evidence one way or another for a jury to make a ruling in a case like this, in a civil case, then there absolutely should have been enough for the police to open a full criminal investigation in the first place. That could have been a lot more substantial than a ruling that ends up giving this person some, consolation prize money, so to speak. So I think that that's the biggest point that I want to make.
Yeah, I can get with that. I mean, it is crazy that this was 2018. Um, but courts and justice systems take a while. This is also in Ireland, so we kind of don't, whatever the case may be, it's a little different. Like things go on different over there with the judging and with the courts and whatever you want to say. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around it because I don't even understand the American law system. So
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think that there is an unfortunate element to how this was handled initially, and because really, look, because I'm seeing Toby in the chat here saying, "Oh, you got to side with Connor because she has no case." What I would say to that is that I want the truth to be what rules. I have no allegiance one way or another. Look, I've had plenty of positive and negative things to say about Connor in certain contexts, and a lot of them very negative things to say. I mean, he's somebody early on in Yama, in the comedy show that I do on this channel, somebody who I clowned, a whole bunch because he's a character that's easily clownable. Um, all of that goes out the window in a situation like this. I want the truth to be what shines through. So if the authorities are not going to do their job initially by getting to the bottom of what actually happened, and for this to, like Chase was saying, go multiple years without a definitive conclusion one way or another, and only come to a conclusion at this point when it ends up being in a civil case, then really there is no justice here. And I think that that's the takeaway.
yeah, it is a weird situation. I'm intrigued to see what the end result is because Connor has stated that he's going to appeal it. I don't know if you saw. Oh yeah, you did see his tweet that he made about it.
Yeah, I have that queued up here. I was going to switch
Okay.
over to that right now. So thanks for leading me into that. So
Yeah.
I'll read this out real quick. This is Connor's statement. He had stayed silent on it for a little while here. This
Two
is the
days.
well, I mean, in relative terms, he didn't
Yeah.
want to immediately launch into it like on the steps of the courthouse kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I get you.
But yeah, so but this is his statement that he just recently released here. He says, "People want to hear from me. I needed time. I know I made mistakes 6 years ago. I should never have responded to her outreaches. I should have shut the party down. I should never have stepped out on the woman I love the most in the world. That's all on me. As much as I regret it, everything that happened that night was consensual, and all the witnesses present swore to that under oath. I have instructed my legal team to appeal the decision. I can't go back I can't go back and I will move forward. I am beyond grateful to my family, friends, and supporters all over the world who have stayed by my side. That's it. No more. Getting back to the gym. The fight game awaits." So
Crazy way to end it. I actually didn't even think about that. It's just like, all right. Michael Chandler, now we can fight.
Yeah, really, right? Yeah, back to the thing that's going to divert the attention away from this case. I mean, what I had said about this in the Discord, I think it stands here too, is that this is about as appropriate as a response is going to get from this. And I wanted to touch on this as well because I think that obviously not the biggest victim, depending on what the reality of the situation is, but a major victim in this and throughout Connor's life is his, I guess, still fiance. They never actually got officially married, but his longtime partner, Dee Devlin. I think that she has been suffering in silence for the entirety of the time that Connor has had the wealth and power that he has had. Seeing everything that you see online from Conor McGregor, all of the partying, all of the women, all of the questionable comments and implied activities that probably have drugs involved. I mean, all of these things are a reflection on the man that she is in love with and the man that she has stuck by since before all of that. She was by Connor's side when he was a pipe fitter, when there was
Yeah.
no money. So I feel really bad for D throughout all of this, and I just wanted to make that known at least.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate reality for most women who want to, not want to, but who end up with successful men. If you want to stay with the billions, you just gotta deal with it. You're popping out children for them, so
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad reflection on Connor himself that that's the type of person that he's comfortable being, I
become.
guess. Yeah, that he has become over time and that he is seemingly okay with being. And there are a lot of people in this world who are not as lucky to have someone by their side like that. And it's a rare thing when you have a person devoted to you in that way. Which I don't know if it's 100% true or not, but I want to believe that if she was there before all of the wealth, then that is a true love there. And I just feel very bad that this is how she's being treated in return. Looking a person who is going to be that loyal to you, like horse in the mouth kind of thing, that's just really sad.
I agree. Yeah, that shit sucks.
So, but yeah, I mean, I guess the question then to close this one little segment down, I have one other thing about it we can touch on real briefly, but before we get to that, what do you think is next for Connor now? Yeah,
Oh, he ain't fighting in the UFC no more. I mean, listen, fight game awaits. I think what's next for him. I mean, appealing the decision. That's going to be another fucking 6 5 years. So I don't know, but fight game awaits. I don't think he's ever fighting in the UFC again. He might do bare knuckle shit just because he'll do like a fucking Mike Perry versus Conor McGregor, owner versus champion type. I don't know. He'll do
yeah,
something stupid.
sellable fight for that promotion if they do
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the appeal is going to hold up anything as far as fighting goes if he actually, excuse me, if he actually is going to get himself in the cage ever again, but it doesn't seem very likely. So I don't know. I mean, I think that really my opinion would be that we're going to get a lot more of the same from him.
Yep. It's just going to be him all over Twitter.
Yeah, right. More Twitter, same behavior. I don't think that this is going to really
So he is
curtail.
now.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, this is you're seeing the product of a long road to get to this point. It would be an extremely big 180, kind of act of God kind of thing, which I don't think he has within him to follow. So,
I
yeah,
I would say Connor's superstardom was more of like an American like thing. Like he was like not an American superstar, but like the way he was living his superstardom was kind of like how an American superstar would live. And I think it just goes to show like he once dedicated all his time to his craft, to his family. And then by the time, superstardom reaches 10 years, 12 years, like when you're just the man on top and you could do whatever, life is just slowly becoming effortless and you can just do what you want. By
yeah,
2018, Connor can just do whatever he wants. And drugs, alcohol, whether that means that he did something consensual or not, like that's just part of who he is now. He just does what he wants in life. Like,
sure. Yeah. And I mean, and it's a good point, too, to bring up that 2018 is really directly after the money fight, after the Maymac fight. So, I mean, talk about the height of his power, his fame, his stardom, and his wealth, which also has continued to grow thereafter, of course, with Proper 12 and everything else that he's done. But yeah, this is again the product of a long road. But I mean, that's then. I'm talking about the Conor now. I think it's the same. I think they really are basically one and the same. You become accustomed. They call it the silk sheets, right? You know, it's hard to wake up and train when you're sleeping on silk sheets.
Yeah.
And I think that he exemplifies that to a T. So I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. I really don't think that there's too much more to remark on this statement. Really, I don't think that the statement makes much of a difference one way or another. This is pretty much a boilerplate response to a situation like this, very tailored to the circumstances. And I mean, maybe perhaps it will be a wake up call. Maybe there's some small percentage of a sliver of a chance that this might actually be some type of course correction for Conor. I highly doubt it.
This is not the longest yard, man. He's cooked.
Sure. And the last thing that I wanted to just briefly, only because I thought it was kind of dumb, was this here. Apparently, in Ireland, people have, because he is a political figure in Ireland as well, to an extent, a very minor extent, from what I understand. I mean, he's talked about himself. He's kind of made himself into a political figure only because he has the platform to do so. I don't think anybody really takes him seriously as a political figure, but I do think that it is somewhat interesting and telling in the political landscape of our times that in Ireland, it would appear that there are women's rights activists that have taken this case and ran with it in a way that is somewhat reminiscent of the social justice warrior type responses that we might have seen in this country some years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, that's a good point that we bring up about the politics behind it, because I kind of do hear that, like, oh, Conor McGregor's like big in the politics of Ireland, and that's probably true. It's mostly just him tweeting about stuff that goes on. But if this is in some way some political jab to get him out of some sort of run anywhere in the fucking Congress, whatever they have over there. I don't think so, but that would be very interesting if somebody had that conspiracy. I mean, I've obviously picked up on it, so somebody.
Yeah, I don't think that that's what it is, but what the way that I would frame it is this way. So I forget his name off the top of my head, but if you are familiar with Bill Burr's podcast, Chase and I were talking about podcasts a little bit earlier before the stream started. I listen to Bill Burr very often, and he had a Irish comedian on his podcast not too long ago, and this comedian was saying that Ireland, being a very small nation, uh, everybody pretty much knows each other, is the way that he framed it. But he was saying that this comedian who, I mean, again, I can't even remember his name off the top of my head, so that shows you how what his reach might be internationally. In Ireland, this comedian is friends with the former president of the country. So that gives you a little bit of a context as to what stardom and power and influence and platforming does in a country of Ireland's size. So someone like Conor McGregor, who has all of those things to a very large extent, he's connected in a lot of different ways just by the nature of those circumstances being as they are. So whether or not he's actually politically active to the point of being in Congress or running for president or any of those kinds of things, he's politically active by the nature of who he is as a human being in a country of that size. So it doesn't surprise me that you have this type of response, because I think that this is political opportunism, is what I would class this as.
Yeah.
This is a very easy thing for activists on any side of the equation to latch onto and say, this is an issue that I have an opinion strongly about because of the platform that it allows for them to have, the nature of who Conor is as a person, and all of the things that come from it, i.e., the BBC here covering this as news.
100%.
So just an interesting element to close this out, the way that this is being utilized by certain people in that country. So that's all I got about the Conor situation. You got anything to add before we move on, Chase?
No, just to see what unravels about it. Same thing, like, with the Nick Diaz thing that we still haven't heard any news about. I also, actually, to add something to that, I think it's funny. We mentioned that Dana acted like he had no idea about the Nick Diaz thing being canceled. But just today, the UFC channel posted Vicente Luque highlights. Like, yeah, he's about to fight. Like, he's fighting soon. It's most likely not Nick Diaz, guys. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've been waiting. I've been kind of like holding on to the video that we did, the stream that we did about Nick Diaz. We have a whole deep dive on Nick's situation that's currently unfolding here. I was holding off to see if there was going to be anything else coming out about it before I posted that, but it doesn't appear to be too much else yet. So maybe I'll clip that and get that out on the channel sometime soon. But if you're interested, you can go back in the VODs on this channel, or I believe Chase was streaming that one as well. So you can go back in the VODs and see what we had to say about that, about his interesting grift on Cameo as well. But keep an eye out for some Nick Diaz related content coming soon, because that situation is unfortunate at the very least. And yeah.
Yeah, week roundup, I guess. So speaking of Cameo, Dan Hooker is now on Cameo for $20.
Hey, all right. Get a cameo from Dan Hooker.
So that's Man of the People. You can get a nice little intro on YouTube. I thought about it. I'm thinking about it. And he also was sparring Speed. I know you guys may know that streamer. I don't know if you saw the clips. That was interesting, I
I
guess.
didn't actually see the clips, but I did see the post of it. Yeah, I Show Speed. I am familiar with the name. I'm not. I don't. I've never actually seen any of his content. I know that he's loud, right? He's a guy who like yells a lot.
Yeah, he's just Kai Cenat. Like, if you know who Kai Cenat is, like, they just have fun on streams and just go places and have fun and hang out. Either way, just thought
Okay,
I'd note that with Dan Hooker since it's relevant.
sure. Yeah, and you're not wrong. Maybe a nice creative player intro coming down
Yeah,
the line for $20. Why not, right?
the American KSI. Okay, that's actually
Yeah,
that's better.
I think that I've seen Toby make that comparison before. That I Show Speed is the American KSI. So yeah, it's a little, that part of the world is a little bit outside of my purview. I only know it when drama comes up, really, more
Yeah.
than anything. But I mean, you see a lot of that nowadays. These influencers getting involved with combat sports in one way or another. Obviously, we talked a whole bunch about Jake Paul and Mike Tyson recently, and Aiden Ross is involved with UFC fighters and stuff. So, yeah, there's interesting crossover there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great for the sport because, what is at this point for the NBA, what does having a celebrity sitting courtside even mean? But now if, a YouTuber or a streamer like Aiden Ross goes and has like a fucking mixed martial art event in their own like facility, which they've done, they do like boxing or whatever. It's like goofy, but it's like they're at least putting the sport in a way that the average audience can just tune in and see it. They're not just like, oh, they can't just tune in and see an NBA game. Like, you can't just like do that. You got to go to your high school to see like basketball played. Like, stuff like that. It's just interesting that they're doing different things with the sport.
Yeah, and that's always something that is somewhat unique to mixed martial arts and combat sports in general, is the level of access that you have to these athletes. I mean, these guys are pretty much as regular people as it gets, and they're out there trying to expand their own platforms. They're showing off their skills and their sport, and if people like the Aiden Rosses of the world want to showcase that, then it is a nice way to get it out to the people. I mean, that's this is its own Wild West kind of environment to an extent, as is in mixed martial arts. It's one of the last bastions of like a place where people can actually just be themselves and still have a career, still have a platform. They really don't have to worry too much about maintaining this facade that other pro athletes have to maintain. The squeaky clean image is not something that is considered in MMA. So I think being as real as it gets when you have these streamers out here willing to platform it, I think it's a great thing personally.
100%.
Cool. So, the last thing that we have for tonight's stream is really a piggybacking off of a topic that we covered a few podcasts ago. We had talked a few episodes ago about One Championship having a bit of a problem with booking their fighters and keeping their fighters happy, so to speak. We had a couple of high level fighters that were on the one roster that are no longer on the one roster, and a couple of people who had some belt changes and things like that. A lot of shakeups going on at One Championship that were somewhat negative, at least in their outward perception. This is going back to a topic that I actually had a full video script written for. I wasn't able to actually record it, but maybe there might be a place for it now, because it would seem that the same type of problems are happening in Bellator slash PFL. Patchy Mix is one of the biggest stars of Bellator, and he posted this tweet here that I've had on screen. He says, "I've been training my ass off for the last year and a half, or last half a year, for nothing. This is frustrating in the prime of my career, and I've had my fight in November canceled, question mark. Then now again, I'm being told I'm off January's Dubai card. I am the best in the world, and I want to fight to prove it." So Patchy Mix, again, one of the biggest stars in Bellator, is saying that he's been ready since November uh, to fight, and I mean, or at least thought he was going to fight in November. His fight is canceled then, and now apparently in January as well. This has started a chain of responses that have come from a number of different people in the Bellator. And then by extension, this goes back to when the Bellator PFL merger happened. I remember distinctly Gegard Mousasi on the MMA Hour saying these same things. So I've talked, or at least introed it a whole bunch. Chase, what do you got on this?
I think it's really crazy to me that you have fighters who want to fight and they just can't get that you just can't get them booked. It's the top of the divisions too, and you just can't get them to headline certain places. I don't know if it's a money thing, like you just don't know if they're gonna make the money there, and you're just sketched out that, oh, we gotta find them. We can't do January, we gotta try February, and if February don't, we're gonna try November. Like I don't know what the deal is. It seems to me though, and listen, and the sample size of 3 fighters that we've seen, make comments on Twitter, maybe not all, but there's got to be a management thing. Maybe you guys just need better managers. I know everybody wants to be their own manager type of deal. They don't want a fighters union because they want to be able to negotiate for themselves. I get that. But maybe this is the reason that you need a manager, is so he can get you the fights and get you going. And if maybe he does have a manager, or maybe he's just not a good one, or I don't know.
I
Whatever
don't
the
think that
case
this
may
is a
be.
management thing, though. This seems like an organizational thing.
Well, I'm giving an option to just maybe not to throw blame on the organization off for it. Maybe this is something that the fighters are doing. I'm not, listen, devil's
Okay.
advocate off first.
Fair
But
enough.
if we are going off the organization thing, then yeah, they probably just don't have the funds to keep it going. I mean, they're probably losing money off the back end every time that they give these cards, because I mean, not many people are tuning into them. Like when you can't get okay, when your top player is saying stuff like this on Twitter, and you have other people in the promotion like just causing a mutiny, like it's just not good for business. And I just don't think, I don't know. It's just weird. It's a weird situation all around.
It's very odd. Yeah. No, I mean, that's really what it's kind of coming down to here, is it's just that this is not great in general for any of these organizations that are not the UFC right now. Because if this is the perception that now your top stars, as Chase was saying, I mean, these are the top stars of these organizations coming out and vocally making it known to their fans and the world at large that these are the problems that you're having. I mean, it's only a matter of time before this starts to bubble over into a lot of shakeups that are going to be very bad for your organization as a whole. Because when this all started with the Gegard Mousasi interview that I had referenced, I was like, well, Gegard Mousasi is saying this. Gegard Mousasi is a guy who has had a lot of things to say in general. He's been sort of to put it politely, a slight prima donna, I would say, to an extent. He's a guy that was dissatisfied with the UFC, went over to Bellator. There might be some situations behind the scenes with him specifically. So him saying that kind of stuff could just be him talking that shit. That could be one aspect of it. But then you also have Diego Lima, who's a Bellator fighter, apparently having the same kinds of issues. Now you've got Patchy Mix. We've got over here Leandro Higo, who I believe, I might be mistaken about this, but the way that it's sounding from this tweet is sounding like he might be the potential opponent of Patchy Mix, saying that both of them are unable to secure this fight and they're ready to go. They want to do it. So it's like, I mean, it's adding up is what I'm trying to say. Because I at the one time I would say, oh, growing pains, PFL and Bellator just merged. But now if you have this at this stage, as far down the line as it has been, and you have it going on in a different capacity over in the other bigger organization that's not the UFC in one championship, it paints a very bad picture of the competition in the marketplace as far as organizations in the MMA space goes.
Yeah, because the only thing they're doing right now, say money is low. The only thing you're doing is you're selling these cards, like, oh, here's a headline. And then people are buying tickets and buying advertisement, buying real estate in their mind for, oh, Apache Mix fight in January. And they're not going to keep up with that. Like, they're not just going to keep the casual consumer is not going every day in their life like, man, Patchy Mix January, Patchy Mix January. So by the time Patchy Mix January comes around and Patchy Mix ain't on there, it's like, well, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I just look like an idiot. Why would I buy PFL tickets ever again? Type deal. So they're just ruining the consumer's opinion on what they can be, because they don't. Not only do we not believe the top competition is there, but they're not even booking the top competition that is in their organization. So we're not even going to see the supposed top of your shit. Like, it's crazy.
Absolutely. No, it's a really good point. And to that point, going back before the merger, one of the biggest criticisms of Bellator, pre PFL Bellator merger, was that Bellator always kind of dropped the ball when it came to their marquee matchups that actually were the ones that could draw eyes. That was a big criticism pre-merger. I mean, that you had things like the Fedor Ryan Bader fight. The biggest example I can think of, one of the worst fights of all time, Dada 5000 versus Kimbo Slice. I mean,
Oh, that was PFL Bellator.
well, it was Bellator before the merger, yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, like, and this is again, these are like, I can a number of fucking Ken Shamrock and Hoist Gracie, the long awaited, I guess, rematch or whatever. I mean, like, that was a shit fight. Like, I mean, you've had opportunities to draw eyes that have been complete fumbles. So if you're already fumbling with the names that you had at the time that you had them, I mean, a lot of them very much past their prime fighters, all that kind of aspect. That's another part of it. But like, these are not that. These are your current crop of in their prime fighters that could be the ones propping you up now. So it's like you're dropping the ball again. This is all pre-merger with that stuff, but still, your reputation in the marketplace is as a ball dropping second rate organization, and now your best fighters are not able to be booked and showcased because you're still dropping the ball.
Yeah.
It just paints a very negative picture. And again, I the reason that I'm really like concerned, not concerned, but the reason that I'm paying such close attention to this, and a lot of people don't care about this aspect of it, but what I would say, and probably will say if this video ends up actually getting made, that I thought was just going to sit in a drawer because I didn't think that there'd be a reason to make it, but there might very well be now, is that when there is not competition in the marketplace, the consumer is the one that loses. We are already in a somewhat monopoly situation with the UFC to begin with, being the premier organization, being the place that everybody knows the best fighters are at. All these other organizations are fighting for the offshoot scraps. And if they can't do it, you end up having them shaved off to the point that the UFC is the only game in town. You end up with the product that you get from that. And
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, just be aware of that, because a lot of people don't care. It's something you might want to care about.
Yeah, and I even said, like, with the UFC, it's like they just need to start poaching fighters. I mean, it's not. Listen, it's business. It's not personal. Yeah, he actually went on a super long rant. Do we want to look into what
I mean,
he
I
was
just
saying?
wanted to bring it up real quick just because I had it here. Was the very last thing, as far as the fighters that have been speaking out about it, was that Patricio Pitbull, yet another one of their bigger stars in Bellator slash PFL, whatever, they're keeping those things separate. He went on a quite a diatribe here. I mean, you see, this is a multi-tweet um, thread that he put out here, responding to Leandro Higo, who I had mentioned, was also saying something about what Patchy Mix was saying. It was a domino effect of fighters in the organization expressing their dissatisfaction here. I don't think we need to go into everything that he said,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
really the gist of it is just that, he hasn't fought since February, wanted to fight 3 times in the year, hasn't been able to. this is he's saying that his opponent that was supposed to be booked for New Year's is now fighting someone else. It's bad business. It's bad business for the fighters. It's bad business for you as the consumer.
Yeah, it looks like they're just laying the tracks as the train's going. They're just trying to make shit up as they go.
Yeah, and to your point with poaching fighters, I mean, I don't think that it's even going to be a poaching situation. If guys like Renier de Ritter from One are actively trying to jump ship over to the UFC, then it's going to be easy pickings for the UFC. Doors wide open here. You can get fights here.
And maybe this is gonna, and this is a weird way to think of it. It's like the best ones, it's already looked at as like, okay, you go to PFL Bellator one, like then you graduate to the UFC. Well, if the UFC already takes the best talent, it's like then the doors are open in the PFL and Bellator. It's like I can be the top guy because all the top guys are gone now. Like I can kind of just make my own way.
Yeah,
So
but
it
it
could
doesn't
be
matter if
interesting.
those guys can't get booked.
Yeah, you're right. But maybe by then, you get rid of the big contracts. It's like, okay, we let them walk. We take our chances. If this is what you're going to do, you're going to try to make ends meet, get rid of your top guys, let them walk on the contracts. And then you just start from square one, just build up new clientele. I know I mean, what else do you have at this point? You have pissed off fighters. You have fighters that you can't get booked. You don't have money. Like I don't know. I'm just thinking here. I can't give you the answers about
No, I hear
PFL and
you.
Bellator.
And honestly, I believe now that you say that, that might have been a point that Gegard Mousasi was making in his interview. I'd have to go back and listen to the exact things that he said, but I think that might have been kind of what he was alluding to. Saying that like, you're just going to basically starve these fighters out of their contracts to the point where, it just dissolves and they do end up going elsewhere. I don't know if that would have been the ultimate goal of the organization, would be to clean house, get rid of the big contracts, and then kind of start with a lower level of base salary. But if that's the case, then this would certainly seem like it's trending in that direction, because a lot of guys in Bellator, PFL are not very happy. And same situation with One.
Yeah, it's just unprofessional. I remember when when this is something else that happened. Yoel Romero fought in Mike Perry's dirty boxing promotion,
Saw that, yeah.
and when I heard of that, I said, "Whose backyard is this going to be in?" And this is what I'm feeling Bellator and PFL is going to become. It's like this is like backyard promotions at this point. Like, who's even going to give a shit? One to go see it, one to want to participate in it, and buy it, and let alone just like keep up with the schedule and then the names, like anything like that. It's like it's a product that you have to just be in the know of it to know about it. The UFC, people know about that shit. And I get it's because they have a lot of different resources and they've had a lot more time in this, but you're not doing good things if you want to get known PFL/Bellator.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy too. The way that Don Davis, the I believe chairman or whatever his title is, but the top dog in the business side of PFL, he is so confident about the strategy that they have. So this here is just an interesting dichotomy, an interesting duality between the way that he's presenting himself and his organization versus the reality and of the situation as we see it. Dana himself pretty much nailed it. I mean, it was almost nail in the coffin the way that he described it in that one press conference, saying, I think it was around Noche when he was saying that like fucking PFL had an event like 2 nights ago. Did anybody know about it? Or whatever. He was saying that they were giving away 2-for-1 tickets. That I'm sure that you remember the clip I'm talking about with that. That was pretty much like throwing dirt on the grave right there, because he's not wrong. And it's sad to say, but there, I guess at the end of the day, really what we can leave it on is that there just needs to be a major course correction here for both of these organizations that we're talking about, PFL and also for One, because you have more and more fighters from the respective organizations voicing their dissatisfaction, and that can only last for so long.
Yeah, and I know Rene de Ritter comes from One, and this particular situation has to do with PFL Bellator, but he was vocal about it, and he knew that he had to be vocal about it in that moment because this is exactly what was going to happen. A ripple effect through all the promotions. You're not seeing it in the UFC, wink, wink, but PFL Bellator, you have people who are like, they didn't maybe necessarily see Rene de Ritter, but they at least subconsciously thought, like, I can speak up now because somebody else already did. Who remembers the second guy speaking up, like
It's true.
easier.
Yeah, no, definitely so. And really, I mean, it's probably a combination of both of those things of him making his statement, kind of opening the door, and then also just the continued dissatisfaction. I mean, that's a snowball effect. When
Yeah.
you started off, especially with the way that they're describing it, where you have one fight that's supposed to take place, at X month, and then it gets moved to Y month, which is 4 months later, and then that fight ends up getting moved again. It's like
And then
there's
you
only
see
so
your opponent, you're like, "Wait, why is he fighting? I thought I was supposed to fucking fight him last month." And then,
bingo. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, just something to keep an eye on. Of course, it's obviously we've covered it twice now, so it's something we're keeping an eye on. We'll keep you posted on anything new that happens here, but in the meantime, that's where we are at with all of this stuff, and I guess that is where we can leave it for tonight. We are off this week. We do not have fights this weekend, which is a rarity nowadays, but we will still be back on Monday to talk about the upcoming fights that will be happening the week after. So it'll be a next week's fights, next episode. But in the meantime, I'm sure that me and Chase will probably be cooking up some stuff on our individual channels. You can see me here on the Yama channel. That's youtube.com/@Yama Show. Something new will be coming out, I'm sure. Maybe me and Chase will be doing a collabo stream at some point. We might even try to get the fight show guys over here to hang out and chat with us a little bit. We've been trying to cook that one up as well. So that's where you can find me and probably us. And Chase, I know that you can tell them where they can find you.
they will be able to find me every time there's a UFC card, and even before that, I'll be making predictions. Hopefully, some days after, making little reaction clips. But that will be on YouTube.com/@CP Smalls, and then on Twitter. Sometimes I'm having some fun. Most of the time, I'm not. But that is at Creative Parton, Partin.
Make sure you follow my boy. I am also live for every single UFC event. Next one, of course, is 310. So we will be hanging out for that. But the one after that to close the year out is UFC Tampa, where I will not be live on the channel because I will be live in person, going to see that one live. That's going to be a lot of fun. So I will be back after that to do a rewatch on the following Sunday. So I will be there live and give you all of my opinions about the live experience on Sunday, where we'll do a rewatch stream. So keep an eye out for all of that stuff upcoming in the future. Again, that is youtube.com/@Yama Show. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram @Yama Show as well. We will see you in the next stream, everybody. Keep an eye out for it. Have a great rest of your week. And as always, most importantly, fight on.
Game.